All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Everybody, hit that like and subscribe. You know I would do it for you, and let's party. Big shout out to the replay gang. Thank you so much for coming back to watch this, even though you missed the live party, guys. That is the best part. So make sure you're here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and sometimes whenever I feel like it. Been going live about 6 days a week. Make sure you hit that subscribe, ring the bell, and you will never miss an Indian Jesus live party ever again. If you'd like to support the channel, head on over to theindianjesus.com for your very own official merch. We do also have an absolutely free to join Discord server. That is right. It is absolutely free to join. We have a bunch of free channels in there where you can meet a bunch of like-minded people 24/7. We're in there hanging out, having a good time. But if you join as a member of this channel by just scrolling right beneath the video and hitting that join button, starts at $2.99 a month. And with that, you get a whole bunch of perks, including members only live streams right here on YouTube and the after party. So every single Monday, Wednesday, Friday stream, as soon as we are done here on YouTube dancing around words and you guys are stuck behind your keyboard, we go over to Discord and you are not stuck behind your keyboard, actually on screen with me and everybody else. You can come up if you want to. You don't have to. Either way, it is a grand old time. You should definitely come and join us. Shout out to Buddha in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. We also got Zippy, DSM Lee. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And oh my goodness, right off the bat, coming in hot, the Funk Master General with the $10 super chat. And of course, every donation comes with a treat for Morty. Thank you, thank you, thank you so very, very much, sir. And of course, that makes you the new sponsor of the stream. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so the this is number 2 of our Philosophy Friday. So if you haven't seen it before, don't worry. We're not going to be diving into anything that you're not familiar with. It is very accessible. But mostly we were just talking about how do we come to learn things and what really is philosophy and all that stuff. And really only today are we going to be diving into philosophy itself, philosophical thoughts and ideals and philosophers and stuff like that, diving in with Locke, Burley, and empiricism. Wait, did we do that one already? We'll see. Otherwise, we will skip to the next one. Let's get to it. As always, guys, if you cannot hear the video, please do let me know.
By the time we're done today, I just might have you question.
Okay, we did this one. Yeah. Okay, so then we are starting with the meaning of knowledge.
You probably think you know a lot of things, but do you know what it means to know something? We've spent quite a bit of time discussing beliefs and knowledge, but we haven't really been specific about what we mean when we talk about those things. Thankfully, philosophers love a good definition. They have very specific and lucid ideas in mind when they use terms like know, or believe, or proposition, or justification. And about 10 minutes from now, you too will know what you're really saying when you use those words. But just because these terms have been defined doesn't mean that philosophers aren't still arguing over them, because that's how philosophers do. Their definitions might seem kind of obvious at first, but the more you think about them, the more nuanced they turn out to be. Like, is having knowledge of something the same thing as being correct?
Is the
nuanced they turn out to be? Like, is
having knowledge of something? All right, we'll bring the captions in if we need them. Is having knowledge of something the same thing as being correct? So this is the type of thinking that we're going to get into today. What is knowledge? How do we determine knowledge? How do we determine if a belief is knowledge? What is the difference? All of those kinds of things. So I would say, is having knowledge of something the same thing as being correct? I would say no, because you can have knowledge of, you can have incomplete knowledge of something. Let's say, like, for example, I don't know all the rules of the game curling, but every 8 years when the Winter Olympics comes around, we all love to sit around and watch the curling. And if I were to say, I think this guy should do this, and that happens to be against the rules, well, then I would not be correct, even though I have knowledge of the game. And then you could argue that I don't have knowledge of that rule, which is why I'm not correct. But this is exactly what he's talking about, with philosophers getting into the nitty-gritty of the details and semantics.
Knowledge of something the same thing as being correct? Or if you believe something to be true and it is true, does it matter if your belief in it is justified? And can you be right about something without really trying?
Yeah. Oh, that one for sure we know. A broken clock is right twice a day.
Answer to these weird questions and more await you, as well as cats.
Shout out to our boy Guam Tech. Welcome to the party. You were here. There wasn't a stream for it. Yeah, what do you mean? Last Friday. You were like, oh, I love this stuff. When we were doing exactly this type of stuff. This is numero dos, part 2. But welcome to the party. That is the attitude I like to see. Welcome.
So you've heard this already. Philosophers love a good argument. But you've figured out by now that philosophers argue in a different way than like kindergarten kids or internet trolls or other people who confuse arguing with sniping back and forth or just thinking up witty comebacks. Nope. Philosophers have all kinds of rhetorical devices at their disposal that they can use to advance an idea.
Yo, hold up. I just want to show you guys something real quick. There, for whatever reason, unless let's do this. Unless YouTube, or excuse me, let's do live streaming. So you can see that at the top of the chat here, it's got a Funkmaster dropping tens on tens on tens on tens. And hey, as much as I appreciate the 10 there, they got it wrong. And I was a little excited for a second, but that is okay. Very, very, very much appreciated. All right, diving back in.
Philosophers have all kinds of rhetorical devices at their disposal that they can use to advance an idea or call into question the ideas of their interlocutors. So in order to hold your own in a philosophical debate, you're gonna have to know the difference between two things that sound like exactly the same thing, an assertion and a proposition. And you'll need to be able to tell when someone actually knows what they're talking about, or
so in case we missed that, let's stop really quick to shout out our boy Zippy DSM Lee over on Rumble with the Rumble rant. So, let me get this out of the way. What do you say? As gassy as I am, I try and focus on, is this it? Yeah, as gassy as I am, I try and focus on systems and processes, i.e. sticks, stones, dominoes, snowballs, and some TNT. I are a dumbass. Some days, you lost me. But either way, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And give yourself some credit. You definitely know how to tangle with these types of ideas. So don't be too hard on yourself. Yeah, and tell me about it. I was different time zones. I was over here. I went to the airport on the wrong day. So I am with you. I'm Schrodinger's kitty. I'm both solid and liquid at the same time. I need a mop for all these brains. Good one. All right, let's dive into. So he said something about
know the difference between two things that sound like exactly the same thing, an assertion and a proposition. And you'll need to be able to tell when someone actually knows what they're talking about, or if they just believe what they're saying might be true. For example, the sentence I'm saying right now is an assertion. An assertion is a linguistic act, either spoken or written, that has a truth.
So assertion, a linguistic act that has truth value. A linguistic act. So either, I was trying to say, I didn't realize that it was right there. I was like, okay, a linguistic act, what does that mean? It just means if you say something, whether it's in text, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's a YouTube comment, whatever it is, that has truth value. So that's our starting point.
Value. And despite what it might sound like, truth value isn't a measure of how right something is. It's just the state of being either true or false or indeterminate. All declarative.
So we would say that something that is not true doesn't have low truth value. It simply doesn't have truth value.
Sentences have truth values of being either true or false or indeterminate. All declarative sentences have truth values. Declarations that assert something about the past or present are either true or false. And assertions about the future are indeterminate, at least when they're expressed, because no one knows if they're right or not yet. For example, I'm going to assert that this cat will pee on my desk before the end of the show. That assertion has a truth value, but it's indeterminate because the show's not over yet.
So, we already can do some philosophy. I can make the assertion that I think Morty will piss in my lap before the show is over. Both of those have an indeterminate, whether the cat or Morty, both have an indeterminate truth value. Now, the likelihood of Morty taking a piss on my lap, maybe when he was a little baby, but that's other than that, it's never happened that I could remember. For him to bring it up, that must be something relatively common within the cat's life. So they have the same position as have an indeterminate truth value, but one is very different than the other. So it's just a state of being, meaning we don't know yet.
Show. That assertion has a truth value, but it's indeterminate because the show's not over yet. We're just gonna have to wait and see. Now, all this contrasts with other kinds of linguistic acts like questions, which don't assert anything. This is a cat is an assertion, as opposed to is that a cat, which is a linguistic act, but not an assertion. But the substance of what you assert has a name too. The content of your assertion is your proposition. It's the underlying meaning of what you're saying. So even though an assertion itself can change depending on, say, what language it's spoken in, its meaning doesn't change just because its outer packaging does. Like,
right. So, are they going to say gato? I was going to say, just because we say cat in English and they say gato in Spanish, that doesn't have a different meaning. They're still referring to the same thing. Hey, shout out to Stephen Colbert Cheese in the building. Welcome to the party. He said, "How you cats doing?" I like it. Good one. Doing well. Good to see ya. Okay. Yeah, you switched over. So, okay. All right. Well, whatever. I go with whatever I see. Zippy says government is indeterminate as it both works and does not work. Not quite. Well, not quite, because the what we would say here in terms of truth value, being the government, the statement the government works, that would not be indeterminate, because we can see and determine whether or not it works. We may disagree on what metrics we're using, but if you say any government that allows X, Y, Z, any government that allows Biden in office does not work, then the truth value of the government works would be 0. If you think the opposite, that, I don't really like the guy, but, we have a democratic republic and the representatives chose, so a government is working, then the truth value of that would be, I don't really know if they use numbers, but that would have a truth value, or a positive truth value. I think that's the way it's determined. So indeterminate truth value means we don't know yet. Not that we're not of the opinion or anything like that. It just means we can't determine yet.
Say what language it's spoken in, its meaning doesn't change just because its outer packaging does. Like, this is a cat and este es un gato both assert the same proposition. And the proposition is true if it asserts a claim that corresponds to reality. The proposition, when I assert this is a cat, is true if the object of the this is in fact a cat, and false if it is anything other than a cat, like this is a cat. It's worth pointing.
Right. So if we were to say that this going back to the government, if we were to say that government is good, then depending on what we mean by good, that would either have the truth value or it would have a negative truth value.
Out that attitude counts too when you're asserting something. A speaker's mental state toward the proposition they're making is their propositional attitude. If I say, like, this is a cat, but I actually believe it to be a rat and I'm trying to fool you, then philosophers would say that I have a propositional attitude of disbelief.
Kind of like, Fauci when he was talking to Senator Paul. What did he say? A propositional attitude of disbelief, aka lying.
Whereas if I think I'm speaking truthfully, I have a propositional attitude of belief. And of course, you're not going to get very far as a philosopher unless you understand the classic definition of belief itself. Based on the lingo you've learned so far today, belief is just when you take a propositional attitude of truth.
All right, so that's the big definition. A belief is a propositional attitude of truth. So you're claiming something in the proposition. You have the attitude that you believe it, that I'm trying not to use the word in the definition, but I forget the language they just used. So it would be the propositional attitude of belief. And we missed it.
As far as a philosopher, unless you understand fully, I have a proposition of propositional.
Yeah. So the propositional attitude of truth. That's just what a belief is, and it just means I think this this not only has truth value, but I believe that I hold that truth value to be accurate. Zippy said, I would think government works is an unclear statement. Government as a concept exists and thus is not indeterminate. Government as a process as a whole is a different thing. Exactly. So that's why it's not a great example, because we're not talking about a truth claim. We're talking about something that actually does exist. And so, or rather, a concept. We're talking about something that does exist. So it's more so in the, you would more so be using this in the realm of ideas to, a cup or a phone or a government, which we can all see is there. Shout out to Balance Shares in the building. I like that one. The be live. Not all of them though. I mean, we all have some true beliefs and some false beliefs, and some more than others. But just because you believe something doesn't mean that it is a lie. But unfortunately, too many of the things that we do believe are lies. Welcome to the party.
Itself. Based on the lingo you've learned so far today, belief is just when you take a propositional attitude of truth. I believe that this is a cat if I think it's true. That is, if my attitude is that the assertion corresponds to reality. And even if I'm wrong, even if there were an aardvark on my desk, or if there weren't a cat on my desk at all,
if he actually believed that aardvark was a cat, then the attitude of propositional belief would be there. He would just be wrong.
And even if I'm wrong, even if there were an aardvark on my desk, or if there weren't a cat on my desk at all, which there isn't anymore, if I really thought there was a cat on my desk, that would just be my belief. My propositional attitude, in other words, is what determines if I have a belief. What all this means is that I, like everyone else, can have false beliefs. Simply thinking something doesn't make it correspond to reality, which is what's needed for truth. But
exactly. Just because you believe something doesn't make it true. Sadly, we still have to tell adult humans that this is the case. So he said, would my example be a good example of a bad example because it's unclear? Yes, I would say yes. That was my thought process in posting it. I was trying to make a poor semantic-like statement. Well, if that was the goal, then you succeeded.
Simply thinking something doesn't make it correspond to reality, which is what's needed for truth. But of course, the fun of arguing is showing off what you know to other people, or at least producing really clever evidence to support your case. So this raises the question of what it means to actually know something in the philosophical sense. The traditional definition of knowledge is that it's a justified, true belief.
So that's 3 parts: justified, true, and belief. That is where you get to knowledge.
Note that there are 3 separate components here. So I have knowledge that this is a cat if I first believe that it's a cat, and also it must in fact be a cat. That is, my belief corresponds to reality and is therefore true. And finally, I can be said to have knowledge about the cat if my belief is justified, meaning I have some sort of legitimate evidence to support my belief. Now, we've already defined truth and belief. Justification is simply evidence or other support for your belief. If you remember back to episode 2, you will recall that premises offer justification for conclusions. And remember back to episode 2, you will recall that premises offer justification for conclusions.
So we have the deductive argument. Remember, this is how, we would talk about breaking a claim down, or rather an argument down, and the conclusion has to be built on the premises, not the other way around.
And justification can come in a variety of forms. Most often, it comes about through testimony, just taking someone's word for it. Not all testimony is strong or trustworthy, of course, but if it comes from someone who is an expert on the topic in question, you might consider the testimony to be reliable. And the fact is, most of what you know about the world, you learned through testimony. You took your teacher's word for it when they were teaching you stuff, and the same goes for every book you've ever read and every news report you've ever seen. They're all just forms of testimony, which you accepted as justification for your knowledge and your beliefs. But justification can come in other forms too. Another common type is first-person observation, information you acquire through your senses.
And that's pretty simple. It's just, your sensory information. If you see something, if you hear something, if you touch something, if you feel that something is hot, then you can know that it's hot through your senses.
If I believe that a cat is a cat because I already have robust and well-informed beliefs about cats, then having had extensive experience with them in the past, I'm identifying the cat as a cat through my direct contact with it. It looks right.
Shout out to Liberty Twitcher. Welcome to the party. said, so if a man isn't a woman but wants to pretend he's a woman, then it's not factual that he's a woman? Of course not. Of course not. This conflicts with modern conventional wisdom. Well, maybe super modern contemporary. I don't know if I would call it wisdom. I'd call it bullshit. But yes, exactly. Just because a man thinks that he's a woman doesn't make it true that he's a woman.
Feels, acts like a cat, ergo cat. But philosophy wouldn't be any fun if the key to knowledge were that easy, right? Until American philosopher Edmund Gettier came along in the 1960s,
Edmund Gettier said, doesn't Gettier any better than this?
philosophers were in pretty widespread agreement about the definition of knowledge, that it's justified true belief. Because you can believe any old thing, but in order to know something, it just makes sense that you also have to have evidence for your belief, and it must be true. In other words, you can have a false belief, but you can't have false knowledge.
You can't have false knowledge. So if you know something, then that automatically puts it in a category where it can't be false, but it also works the other way around. If you don't know something for sure, then you can't claim that you have the knowledge of it. You can believe, but it's not the same thing.
And if something you thought you knew turns out not to be true, then the fact is you never actually knew it. You just believed it. And likewise, you might happen to hold a true belief, but if you don't have any justification for it, if you just accidentally happened to be right, which...
So this one said there's 420, shout out to 420 geese flying over Wisconsin at this very moment. That may very well be true, but you have no justification for thinking that. Unless you are somebody who actually does work in measuring this, maybe you have a justification for this, but you can believe this all you want, and you might be right, but that doesn't have the justification of just stating it. Shout out to TB Bursky. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. So the cure for observational data is double-blind randomization trials. Indeed. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we said a man in a dress is just a man in a dress. Nothing wrong with that until they act beyond average behavior. Bingo. Well said, sir. Well said.
True belief, but if you don't have any justification for it, if you just accidentally happened to be right, which happens sometimes, that doesn't count as knowledge either. Enter Edmund Gettier. Gettier wrote a short but fabulously influential paper that turned the standard understanding of knowledge upside down. He did this by proposing what have come to be known as Gettier cases.
Every time I turn the captions back on, there's something on screen.
Situations in which one can have justified true belief, but not knowledge.
So a Gettier case where you can have a justified true belief, which is what we were saying knowledge was before, but not knowledge. So that seems paradoxical based on the definitions we've already been given. So, yeah, thank you. TM. But yeah, this is an interesting concept, and this is one I don't remember at all. A situation where you can have justified true belief, but not knowledge. Let's see.
Cases. Situations in which one can have justified true belief, but not knowledge. Which brings us to this week's Flash Philosophy. Let's go to the thought bubble. Here's one of Gettier's original cases. Smith and Jones have both applied for the same job. The president of the company told Smith that Jones will get the job. This counts as evidence. The president of the company would seem to be a reliable source of this information.
Okay, so far the boss has said Jones is getting the job. That is our justification that Jones will get the job. Math? Maybe. If not, that's a great guess. That is a great guess. Shout out to Guam Tech. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. If you are on any of the other platforms and you would, if you are able to open a tab for YouTube, that would be amazing for me either way. But either way, glad you are here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Who's the dude in the doorway? Genghis Khan.
Have both applied for the same job.
Genghis Khan. So two guys applying for the same job. Boss says Jones is going to
president of the company told Smith that Jones will get the job. This counts as evidence. The president of the company would seem to be a reliable source of this information. Meanwhile, Smith counts the coins in Jones's pocket and sees that there are 10 coins in there. Smith
Talk about pocket watching.
Then forms a belief based on his first-person observational evidence of the coins as well as the testimony of the company president. He comes to the belief that the person who gets the job has 10 coins in his pocket. But it turns out the testimony of the president was false, and it's Smith, not Jones, who gets the job.
Okay, so based on the idea that we're taking the evidence that the person who's going to get the job, says the boss, is Jones, we're taking that as evidence, and we're tying that to this random fact that he has 10 coins in his pocket. So the statement, the person with, what was it? The person with the most coins, or no, the person who gets the job has 10 coins in his pocket. But if the boss was either lying or wrong when he said Jones is going to get the job, then this statement, even though it has justification, it not being true changes the thing, changes the perspective, even though he's in the same situation. Now, let's say, if I think they might be going this way, let's say the reason that Smith counted the coins in Jones's pocket was because he thought, well, I have 10 coins in my pocket. Maybe that will, so if that's the case, if Smith has 10 coins in his pocket, then this statement, the person who gets the job has 10 coins in his pocket, the justification being Jones is going to get the job and he has 10 coins, this could still be correct, but it wouldn't be knowledge if he has the 10 coins in his own pocket. It wouldn't be knowledge because this is based on the assumption that it's going to the other person who just also happens to have the 10 coins. So is we saying 2 plus 2 equals 4? Or is that the opposite? 2 plus 2 equals 4 means you already have the knowledge, but without math, 2 plus 2 is still 4. So kind of math, 2 plus 2 equals 4, but you missed 2 extra things to count.
What?
I don't follow. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm too dumb for that one. But so that's where I think we're going with this one. The idea that this can still be true, but not be knowledge.
Then forms a belief based on his first-person observational evidence of the coins as well as the testimony of the company president. He comes to the belief that the person who gets the job has 10 coins in his pocket. But it turns out the testimony of the president was false, and it's Smith, not Jones, who gets the job. And it just so happens, unbeknownst to Smith, that he also has 10 coins in his pocket. So
That's what I thought.
Smith has a belief that the person who gets the job has 10 coins in his pocket.
And the belief is correct, but it is not knowledge because it is based on the wrong justification.
And that is justified because he counted Jones's coins and the president told him Jones was getting the job. And his belief also turned out to be true. The person who got the job did have 10 coins in his pocket. However, neither pieces of justification actually pointed Smith to the right answer. The president's testimony was wrong and the 10 coins that he saw were in Jones's pocket, not his own.
So that's very interesting. So, I mean, it's a very subtle thing to differentiate because it wasn't justified in what he believed, but the justification was wrong. It was true, and, it is a belief, but it's not knowledge because of the fact that he was basing it all on Jones will get the job, says the boss, and that never happened. Shout out to Stephanie. Welcome to the party.
Getting the job so happens, unbeknownst to Smith, that he also has 10 coins in his pocket. So Smith has a belief that the person who gets the job has 10 coins in his pocket, and that is justified because he counted Jones's coins and the president told him Jones was getting the job. And his belief also turned out to be true. The person who got the job did have 10 coins in his pocket. However, neither pieces of justification actually pointed Smith to the right answer. The president's testimony was wrong and the 10 coins that he saw were in Jones's pocket, not his own. So it seems Smith simply lucked into being right. Gettier argued that we now have a case of justified true belief,
but not knowledge.
That is not knowledge. As he pointed out, you don't know something if you simply stumbled into the right answer.
The same way that you could say there's 420 geese in the sky, just because that is you say that somebody, you talk to somebody who told you that they were a bird watcher, but you have no reason to believe that. They're just a random person online with username 0075, whatever. I'm a bird watcher, and right now there's 420 geese in the air. So you could believe that, and you could be right. but that's still not technically knowledge if that person didn't have any actual knowledge of how many geese were in the sky. Well, like I said before, this is exactly what the media tries to say about all of us conspiracy theorists. We just so happen to be right. You weren't knowledgeable about anything. That's what they try. But when we give the justification, it debunks that. So it is knowledge. It is not merely a true, justified true belief. It is, in fact, knowledge. We knew. We didn't just luck into it. We didn't just stumble into it. We knew it.
Thanks, Thought Bubble. The philosophical world was turned upside down by this idea, and philosophers, loving a good counterexample, began generating their own Gettier cases. American philosopher Roderick Chisholm proposed this one. Looking across a field, you see an object that looks like a sheep, and you form the belief that there is a sheep in the field. It turns out that the object you see is actually a dog. Yet there is also a sheep obscured from your vision by a hill. So,
okay, so there is really a sheep back here, but what you're seeing on top is actually just a fluffy dog.
the object you see is actually a dog. Yet there is also a sheep obscured from your vision by a hill. So you have a justified true belief, but the justification for your belief, the object that you saw, is not a sheep. You just lucked into being right. Once you understand how it works, it's pretty easy to generate Gettier cases of your own. And many philosophers today think Gettier successfully destroyed the justified true belief definition of knowledge. But even though the 1960s might seem long ago to you, remember, philosophers are in the business of having millennia-long debates about stuff. So it shouldn't surprise you that the philosophical debate about this is still raging. But if knowledge is not justified true belief, then what is it? Next time, we will look at one possible answer. In the meantime, you learned about some of the key concepts we use when discussing belief and knowledge. You learned what defines an assertion and a proposition, and that belief is a kind of propositional attitude. We also talked about forms of justification and the traditional definition of knowledge, which Edmund Gettier totally messed with using his Gettier cases. And the cat did not pee on my desk, because the cat was unable to spend any time at all on my desk.
There we go. So it went from indeterminate.
So it turns out the assertion that I made was false. Crash Course Philosophy.
Good job. Good job. So that is a good basis for how we understand that the ideas in our head, how closely do they relate to reality? And that's really what we're trying to understand when we talk about truth and knowledge. But we have to start at this very, very basic level in order for that to make any sense. And when we try to build on that, and create a mechanism of understanding or a field of knowledge like science, then, understanding how we get from A to B, or rather premise one to the conclusion, then it's very important that we understand the difference between science and pseudoscience.
Imagine being alive when Albert Einstein was developing his theories of relativity, or witnessing the birth of psychology as Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis took over the scientific mainstream. The early 1900s was an amazing time for Western science. There was another figure on the intellectual scene when these great minds were at work. Young philosopher Karl Popper was born in Austria.
What is a philosophy? It's impossible to speak in such a way that you cannot be... It's impossible to speak in such a way that you cannot be misunderstood. Huh? It's impossible to speak in such a way that you cannot be misunderstood. I don't get it. It's impossible to speak in such a way that you cannot be misunderstood, so that you are understood. So it's impossible to speak in such a way that you're understood? What? I don't get it.
Intellectual scene when these great minds were at work. Young philosopher Karl Popper was born in Austria, Freud's home turf, but built his career in Britain, giving serious consideration to the new ways that these and other scientists of the time were thinking about the world. And after looking at different methods that people like Einstein and Freud were using, Popper came to an understanding that not all scientific achievement was created equal. He ended up making an important distinction between science and what he called pseudoscience. And in the process of doing this, he taught us volumes about the nature of knowledge itself and how we can best test it and challenge it to bring us closer to the truth.
DFTBA! And if anybody can tell me what DFTBA means, let me know, and I will cash app you. Karl Popper, science and pseudoscience. Yeah, Zippy said being clear and concise only gets you so far, unfortunately. Unfortunately. But I think the better that we familiarize ourselves with these things, we can help this spread far and wide.
Emerging at roughly the same point in history, Freud and Einstein both made predictions that they hoped would help us better understand our world. Freud, concerned with the individual psyche, predicted that our childhood experiences would have a heavy bearing on who we grew up to be. Meanwhile, Einstein waited patiently for a solar eclipse that could disprove his entire general theory of relativity, depending on what it would reveal about how light travels through space. And then there was Karl Popper, born in 1902, who grew up to observe these predictions with keen interest. As a young scholar, he learned about the psychoanalytic theories of Freud and attended lectures given by Einstein himself about the rules of the universe. And he noticed that these great thinkers used different methods. For example, Popper observed that Freud was able to make just about any data point work in service of his theory. Freud could explain a person's intimacy issues, both in terms of not being hugged enough as a child or in terms of having been hugged too much.
And that's the big criticism of the entire field of philosophy, is that despite Freud being, spot on with some things, he stretched that so far. And often, today will, instead of, somebody writing, all these types of different books and volumes of this, then they have their online attitude. And the analog I see here is when we have somebody who's really, really smart in one realm, usually in some scientific realm, and then they delve into, for example, politics. And they think because they understand one thing really, really well, that they can apply that level of knowledge to everything just by doing a cursory understanding. Neil deGrasse Tyson, a lot of the public atheists who are super pro-trans and all that stuff. Just because you're good in one area doesn't mean you know everything about everything that ever was.
Meanwhile, almost any behavior on the part of a female could be explained in terms of penis envy. Evidence to support Freud's theories seemed to be everywhere, but Popper saw that Einstein was making a different type of prediction. Instead of looking backward and using past data to predict the present, he was looking ahead and predicting future states of affairs. Einstein.
So now we're trying to predict the future. As he says, without a ton of data, all you can do is take your train of thought to the extreme. So you then can test it and try to understand it more deeply. And concise, stay in your lane. Or at least, not necessarily that you have to stay in your lane, but recognize where you're swerving out of your lane. By all means, just because you're a great scientist doesn't mean that you shouldn't get into politics or anything else. It's just the same time and dedication that you put into being at the top of one industry or one academic discipline, you have to do with everything else. Shout out to Otangelo. Welcome to the party. Have I ever looked at the trees? Indeed, I have looked at trees in the Jersey State, or in the Garden State. There is plenty of them. Welcome to the party.
To predict the present, he was looking ahead and predicting future states of affairs. Einstein's theory was truly risky, Popper realized, because if the future didn't match his predictions, then his theory would be conclusively disproven. If the results of the solar eclipse in 1919 had been different, general relativity would have been finished. Freud, on the other hand, could always just read the past differently so as to maintain some kind of confirmation of his theory. Suddenly, Popper understood the difference between the science that Einstein was doing and what Freud was doing, which Popper rather snootily referred to as pseudoscience. Now, whether psychology today is considered a hard science or a social science or some other kind might be debatable, but you won't find many mainstream thinkers who consider it pseudoscience. But still, nearly 100 years ago, when Popper was reaching these conclusions, no modern philosopher had really characterized what science truly meant.
So that's what we're actually discussing here, is the birth of this categorization of type of thinking, type of observation, type of measurement that we come to call science, and then able from there to determine what is outside of that scope and call it pseudoscience. Not everyone can be a Renaissance man. Sometimes it's more beneficial to everyone to stay in your lane. That also shouldn't stop you from trying to gain knowledge in other areas. Agreed.
And what the implications were for the pursuit of knowledge. The traditional understanding of the scientific method, going all the way back to the ancient Greeks, relied on the belief that to look at the world with a scientific eye is to observe with no preconceived notions. You simply look, see what you see, and then develop hypotheses based on those observations. So you look at a swan, and you notice it's white. You look at another swan, it's white too. You look at enough white swans, and eventually you hypothesize that all swans are white. This is what Freud said he was doing, observing relationships. But instead of it being the relationship between swans and their colors, it was between particular human phenomena and human behavior. But Popper argued that everyone has preconceived notions of some kind. We all start out with a hunch, whether we admit it or not.
And this goes back to the nurture versus nature argument. That is, again, fundamental to psychology, and why a lot of people don't necessarily think that it's a legitimate science. I think it's a legitimate soft science. It's certainly not a hard science. But the the fact of the matter is that we do have certain innate, whether it's instincts, what's the word I'm looking for? But yeah, I mean, instinct. We all have instincts. We all have a standard operating procedure. And then that we add on to that.
Has preconceived notions of some kind. We all start out with a hunch, whether we admit it or not. After all, what you decide to observe is determined by what you already care about enough to observe in the first place. And the fact that you care about it so much means that you already have some beliefs about it. So, what does that tell us about Freud? Popper became convinced that methods like his that only served to confirm beliefs were pseudoscience, and they could be used to prove anything.
So if you're looking to methods like Freud that only serve to confirm beliefs, so if we go back to the deductive arguments and we're looking at the premises that should then lead to the conclusion, if you're working from the conclusion and filling in the premises that will make that work, that, according to who are we talking about here? Not Popper.
Beliefs.
According to Karl Popper, that is pseudoscience.
About it. So, what does that tell us about Freud? Popper became convinced that methods like his that only served to confirm beliefs were pseudoscience, and they could be used to prove anything. Consider the existence of Santa Claus. If I try to find evidence of Santa's existence, I'm gonna find it easily. The world is filthy with evidence of Santa Claus. There are presents.
Well, now it's Elf on a Shelf, right?
Under the tree on Christmas morning, there's the guy at the mall, and then there are all those songs and stories and TV shows and movies. They combine to confirm your belief in Santa. But Popper would argue that it's only by seeking to disprove Santa's existence that you can demonstrate his unreality.
So only by seeking to disprove whatever it is that you're trying to prove. This is where we get into the idea of the null hypothesis. So if we're talking about Santa, and your hypothesis is that I see Santa stuff everywhere. So I think my hypothesis is Santa exists. In order to address that in a scientific manner, the only way is to seek to disprove that and to try to prove the null hypothesis, which would be the opposite of the hypothesis, therefore being Santa does not exist. And so if you are trying to prove that Santa doesn't exist and you cannot do that, then it is reasonable to say that Santa does exist. But of course, you're not going to be able to do that. And you still have the integrity of not looking for your conclusion, but looking the other way. Zibby said, nurture, to teach and train people to build on their innate skills, to build upon one's nature, to better live amongst others. How nice it would be if we could live in such a world. Excuse me. I agree. Yep. God is not what they said. He wears red and has a white beard. Well, they did say that part. They did say that part. God is really everywhere. He really is. He really is. I can just feel him in my heart.
Argue that it's only by seeking to disprove Santa's existence that you can demonstrate his unreality. So the question is, when we begin to test a theory, are we looking to confirm it or to disconfirm it?
Are you looking to confirm it or disconfirm it? And the answer should always be disconfirm it, unless you already are talking about the null hypothesis. Always skepticism. Believe nothing except that anything is possible. But start with believing nothing.
This is the key point. For Popper, science disconfirms, while pseudoscience confirms. He elaborated on this insight by establishing a series of distinct conclusions about science and knowledge. First, he said, it's easy to find confirmation of a theory if you're looking for it. Remember the presents under the tree? If you're looking for proof that Santa exists, you're not likely to keep searching for contradictory evidence after that.
And then, of course, the easiest one here is Orange Man bad. You can find plenty of examples of Trump saying not nice things and things that could be twisted to sound racist or homophobic or xenophobic or any of these things. So if you're looking to prove, all I need is one piece of evidence that Trump said something that I don't like, that I can fit into this box of racist or whatever it is, then you're going to find yourself not in accordance with reality. Whereas if you think Trump is a racist person, then what you should be doing, because you're so confident in that hypothesis, is to try to prove, go out there and be like, okay, let me try to prove that he's not racist. And then when I can't do that, I'm justified in calling him racist. But yet again, you will not be able to do that.
Looking for proof that Santa exists, you're not likely to keep searching for contradictory evidence after that. Second, confirmation should only count if it comes from risky predictions, ones that could actually destroy your theory. Because Popper observed that every good scientific theory is prohibitive. It rules things out. This might sound strange because no one wants to be wrong, but Popper says that every false belief we discover is actually good, because that gets us that much closer to believing only true things. Next, Popper argued that the...
So that's huge. Hold on, give me a second here. That's huge. The notion of every false belief we discover is actually good because it gets us closer to only believing true things. And so if we are bringing it back to religion, then if we have the conclusion that God exists, or that God is a particular type of God, or whatever it is, then if you believe that to be true, then it shouldn't be difficult in terms of emotionally, it shouldn't be that difficult to do the philosophical work to justify that, because you really believe it. And then if you come to determine that that's not what you believe, well, then you don't believe it anymore. So you have no connection to it.
That gets us that much closer to believing only true things. Next, Popper argued that the only genuine test of a theory is one that's attempting to falsify it. So
essentially saying the same thing.
if you were to test for Santa's reality, your method would require you to try to prove that he doesn't exist, rather than proving that he does. So you stay up all night waiting to catch him delivering his presents. This is risky, because if the person who actually shows up to put presents under the tree is your dad, then you've destroyed the Santa hypothesis. On a very similar note, Popper also pointed out that irrefutable theories are not scientific. If it can't be tested, then your theory doesn't have much value.
If it can't be tested, your theory doesn't have much value. So if your theory is that God exists and we can't test that, then it doesn't have much value. So if you get something out of believing in God, well, then we can look at what you get from believing in God. And if you want to believe in God, or you don't want to believe in God, as long as you're taking the good stuff that comes with it, what is the issue?
Like, you can only confirm that Santa is real by doing everything in your power to prove that he's imaginary, and then failing to do so. So you need to be tugging on Santa beards at the mall, you need to investigate reports of Santa sightings and other weirdos caught breaking into people's houses through their chimneys. If you want to be able to...
Hey, we got Howie in the building. Welcome to the party. Good to see you. We're diving into some more philosophy and talking about how if you're doing science, you have to be trying to disprove the thing that you think, the hypothesis that you have. Here, we're taking an easy example of Santa. If you believe that Santa, or if you're trying to believe, if you are trying to prove that Santa exists, your hypothesis is that Santa exists. The only way to, number one, come to a conclusion with that, and number two, properly investigate that, is to try to prove the opposite, and only take the conclusion of the hypothesis once you fail. So you try to prove that Santa doesn't exist, and when you fail, then you can take the hypothesis of Santa exists, and you can have some level of confidence in that. But of course, again, just like with God, It ain't gonna happen. Context, and in a weird way, I guess the great Randy was actually trying to prove that magic existed. Yeah, I mean, what is it's not the great? Is that what he goes by? The or is it Randy the Great? No, that's, and I thought it was James Randi. Okay, that's is that who you're talking about? James Randi. Yeah. So this guy had, it was what, like 10,000, 100,000, mad money to any psychic or person who had some way to manipulate the physical world in a way that they weren't supposed to. Magic. If you could do it, it'd give you a whole stack of cash. And how long did that go on? For years, and nobody was ever able to. Yeah, he did. Okay, I wasn't sure if he got that high, but yeah, he offered $1 million. And so, according to this here, Glomtek is right in a weird way. He was trying to prove that magic existed, and Dr. Evil didn't even accept the challenge. That's all he ever wanted. $1 million.
Santa sightings and other weirdos caught breaking into people's houses.
Oh, I missed this one. What did Zippy say? Let's fire up nuclear fission and make a star. But really, fusion and fission can be tested and implemented and has value. Making a star or black hole, not so much. I mean, I don't necessarily know enough about the fusion and fission to connect it to stars and black holes, but I'm definitely down with nuclear energy for sure.
He's imaginary and then failing to do so. So you need to be tugging on Santa beards at the mall, you need to investigate reports of Santa sightings and other weirdos caught breaking into people's houses through their chimneys. If you want to be able to really trust in your belief in Santa in a genuinely scientific way, you need to put your belief to the test in every way you can imagine. This is where Popper says that you have earned the right to call a theory scientific. And finally, once you've disproven your theory, Popper said, you need to be willing to give it up. I mean,
yes. You need to be willing to give it up. You need to be willing to give it up. If you are wrong, just be wrong and then start being right. If you're under the belief that Santa exists and then you go around pulling beards and all this stuff and you catch your, you whatever, you catch your dad putting gifts under the tree, whatever it is, then you've been proven wrong. And you have to open yourself up to the idea that you are going to have false beliefs in your life. And whether it's Santa or anything else, this is just another one. And now I can throw away that false belief. And I don't need to fill in some other belief in that spot just because I lost a belief. Just because I once believed in Santa and now I no longer believe in Santa, I don't need to shove the Easter Bunny in there. I don't need to talk about the Tooth Fairy. It's just, okay, I was wrong about that. The information I have does not lead to the conclusion that I thought. And that's it. That's it. And it's okay. We're all wrong about stuff. Zippy is ready for what isn't I've heard that before, but Dyson sphere. What's that? Hypothetical megastructure that encompasses a star and captures a large percent of its solar output. Concept is a thought experiment that attempts to imagine how spacefaring civilization would meet its energy requirements. I've definitely heard of this. Why are my pictures not loading? I've definitely heard of this, but I'm not too familiar. Yeah, I have no idea what any of this means. A little bit above my pay grade. But yeah, that is what we are talking about. Stephen Colbert said, you need to be willing to give up extreme libertarian politics. Absolutely. I absolutely am. If somebody can prove to me that humanity needs some type of a top-down, huge structure in order to make society work, then okay, I'm wrong. I just don't think that's the case. You're allowed to have your beliefs. You just need to be willing to give them up. Zibby said it's more a value thing. We can get to a point to make stars and black holes, but that's not really the focus of nuclear physics. It's putting the cart before the horse. You need both in correct order to have value. Fair enough. I will take your word for it.
And finally, once you've disproven your theory, Popper said, you need to be willing to give it up. I mean, you can still cling to the Santa myth even after you catch your dad putting gifts under the tree by accepting his lie that Santa had dropped the gifts off earlier and that he was just helping. But if you're a scientist, you're gonna have to be willing to let your beliefs go, accept the evidence, move on. And this is the modern scientific thinking that we accept today. Testable, refutable, falsifiable.
Falsifiable being maybe the most important on that list.
You don't seek to prove scientific hypotheses right, you only prove them wrong. A lot of this might seem so obvious that maybe you're wondering why we're even talking about it.
Remember, as I said last time, that a lot of this stuff is going to seem kind of like he just said, that you kind of already know it. But very much in philosophy and psychology alike, there's so many things that are kind of intuitive in the sense that you do kind of probably have a general idea, but if you don't have somebody actually spell it out, then it's not something that you can just pick up. You might have a general idea of, yeah, people generally work this way, or things generally happen that way, but I don't necessarily know why. I don't know the mechanism. I don't know how to read the sign, whatever it is. There's going to be a lot of that where it's like, oh, okay, I kind of knew that already. But hearing it very succinctly and well defined is really really helpful. Holly says, I struggle with faith only because I also believe in science, and it's a quandary for me for sure. I would have to pass the torch to someone who could explain science and evolution fully, as well as God. Stephen Colbert is stepping up. Yeah. Many have tried, and all have failed. But I think that's healthy. I think it's healthy to be in a spot where you're not looking to throw away beliefs and say, "Oh, well, I must be stupid," and it's not about that at all. It's about being humble. It's about understanding that you don't understand, knowing that you can't know everything, knowing that there's always more to learn. And I think as long as you're on that path, then number one, none of us have the answer. There's no the answer to it. So, everybody is essentially in the same position as you there, just to different degrees. And again, I think that's healthy and that's good. When you are stuck in a dogmatic belief where, nope, this is it, that's when things go wrong. That's when things go wrong. What's the Socratic paradox? Which we talking about? The Dyson sphere would be the shit. You didn't censor that? Oh, maybe your phone did? I was gonna say, there's no way Rumble is censoring words with stars, but I assume your phone did it. Zippy said, did you say it over here? A nuclear energy plant is like a cell-sized Dyson sphere. True. Oh, the Dunning-Kruger. Yep. Oh, we know all too much about Dunning-Kruger, don't we? That was a joke. Anybody? Thank you.
Only prove them wrong. A lot of this might seem so obvious that maybe you're wondering why we're even talking about it. But that's how right Popper was. He was one of those rare philosophers who actually managed to hit on an idea so right that we don't even really argue about it anymore. So it sounds like I've been talking mainly about science all this time, but Popper and his insights also tell us a lot about knowledge in the philosophical sense. For Popper, knowledge was about probability and contingency. We are justified in believing whatever seems most probable given our current data, and we should always be willing to revise our beliefs in the light of new evidence. In other words, our belief should be contingent upon...
Contingent. As long as I have reason to believe, I will continue to believe. But that is contingent on the fact that I have that justification. Without that justification, it's just dogma. It's just dogma. He said, if God is the absolute, then the universe is just what God made. Man being finite, we only really know what we can build with our hands. He threw a lot there. I don't know what God being absolute has to do with man being finite, with what we can build with our hands. You're throwing there's a lot of different ideas there that don't really connect, at least not that I can see.
our beliefs in the light of new evidence. In other words, our belief should be contingent upon the data themselves. This would not have satisfied Descartes, who was always concerned about certainty, but Popper never thought that certainty was possible in the first place.
So remember, we go back to Descartes, and he's the I think, therefore I am. And what if there's an evil God who is tricking me, and everything that I see, feel, hear, everything is false? How could I know what is real? So do I know that other people exist? No. I mean, I could be a brain in a vat. We've heard that a million times. And so you strip down every layer and you get down to the only thing I could know for sure is that there's something doubting and there's something having this thought. And that's where we get, I think, therefore I am. And, as time goes on, you can even pick that apart more. But as that is the one thing that we can be certain of. But then a lot of other people later on would then come and say, well, what if you're a TV character? I use Ross from Friends. Ross from Friends he had a thought that him and Rachel were on a break. That thought exists. That thought is real. So just because thoughts exist doesn't mean that the thinker exists. Unless, and again, we could say that Ross, what is it? Ross Geller, right? Yeah, Ross Geller. We could say that Ross Geller exists as a character, but there's no person which, given the right proximity, you could touch Ross Geller. And so this is all just level one. This is all just level one.
Was always concerned about certainty, but Popper never thought that certainty was possible in the first place. If anything, he thought being certain of something causes you to close your mind, and that's not what we want.
Dogma. If you are certain that a man can transform into a female, if you are certain that there's a God that exists, you're fucking up.
Always remaining open to the idea that your current beliefs might be wrong is the best way to get closer to the truth. So where does this leave us? Remember,
Context says, when we get to the point of being able to implant memories, I'm sure that Descartes will be rolling in his grave. Yeah, then there is absolutely no way to know if anything at all exists. But at that point, obviously that is a real issue. But at that point, we would already have that line of thinking. And we would want to already have the reason to want to build something in, kind of like the what's the movie, the Inception with the the top, something like that will be able to differentiate virtual reality or whatever it is from our base reality. God indeed is a postulation, and evolution indeed is a fact of nature. Well said, sir.
Started out trying to prove that we know the things we thought we knew. But you have to be open to the idea that your beliefs might be false, because that's the only way that holding on to them can really mean anything. Otherwise, we're all just believing whatever we want with no grounds for adjudication between beliefs. You should keep that in mind, because that's the name of the game for the rest of this course. You only get to believe the things you have reasons for.
All right,
and we're going to
guys.
start with the area that is hardest for most people: God. Hope to see you there. Today, you learn about Karl Popper and his insights into science, pseudoscience, and knowledge, which might best be summarized as science disconfirms while pseudoscience confirms.
So that's the takeaway. Science shit, I already forgot.
And customer support, try Squarespace at squarespace.interweb firms.
Science disconfirms, pseudoscience confirms. There we go. So I said I'm still trying to figure out how it can be while evolution how it can be meaning God, how it can be, well, evolution is at play also. I guess I fall more on the side of proof. So as an atheist, I definitely think that it is that it's possible for there to be some type of deistic God that would have, pushed over the dominoes, and that, we had the Big Bang, evolution is real, evolution is a fact, all that stuff happened, but maybe there was a consciousness and energy, something outside of our observable universe, outside of our what we would call nature, that was the first cause. Because that's where we don't really understand. We know that the Big Bang was the beginning, but we don't know what caused the Big Bang, or even cause is kind of a weird word. for the Big Bang specifically, because usually we think in cause and effect, but cause and effect has a temporal factor. Like the cause comes first and the effect comes after, whereas the Big Bang was the start of time. So the notion of what was before the Big Bang, that's like asking what happens in the movie before it starts.
What?
I don't make no sense. So it's definitely a lot. Zippy said conceptually, God is an absolute construct that falls outside of man and the universe. Hence, the only thing we can know is what we can build, i.e., replicate things inside the universe. Yeah, I would agree. I think as of right now, we do not have the any mechanism to measure or detect anything outside of what we know as the observable universe. And I guess in that context, we would talk about the dimensions. You know, like we can see in 3D, and we can, you know, kind of tap into what may or may not be a higher dimension type thing, but not with our senses. Not with our senses. That's all we got. Stephen Colbert said God could be a prime mover. That is the God of Spinoza and Edison and many U.S. founding fathers. Yep. That at least wouldn't break the laws of physics. That's the name of the game. We know that the laws of physics at least hold for the observable universe, at least at the macro scale. At least. So we have to use that as a basis, because even if the laws of physics are only very local, meaning that they only work for, you know, let's say the laws of physics only work for this part of the universe. It's possible that in other parts of the universe that we are not able to measure, physics works differently. But we can't know that. And so it's very, very, very unlikely that within the observable universe, the laws of physics, actually, no, I think that is what makes it a physical law, is that we know within the observable universe that if it is a law, why am I blurry? There we go. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, it has to be, that's why the law is so much higher than a theory in science, despite the fact that the theory is still a fact of nature. Stephen goes on to say, God could be some kid programming us as a computer simulation in his dad's basement, for all we know. Just a little point assuming such things without evidence. Yeah. And isn't that what she said? I could have sworn. Didn't I say that? Either way. Gontek said, is it really so hard to believe that God actually made evolution too? Just my personal belief. But if God made the universe, then science just proves the laws he created to keep it running. Yeah, I think that is a possibility. I don't think that we need to say that. I think there's enough physical things at work to say that, like, if there's this all-powerful being, then all these things are kind of working on their own. And so the analogy that I would take to that is, what is it? I don't even know what they're doing. I think it's mobile games, or it might just be, you know, like shit posting on Twitter, but whatever it is, where these people have like a farm of phones and computers where they're posting or playing or whatever it is, and one person can control, you know, a bunch of different things. And so it seems like if there is a God, then the God created a system to let all the phones work without even having to do anything. And if I'm that person, or if I'm that being, I feel like that would be boring. So I don't understand why a God would just do a thing and then be like, all right, I'm fucking bored. Like, gravity's taking care of this, love is taking care of that. You know what I mean? So I would definitely see it as more of a first mover. That's as far as I'm really willing to take it. So no, have I? Not specifically. I think I've read. I mean, I'm sure I went over a bunch in college when I was studying it, but not recently. Certainly not recently. Do you actually believe in a God that intervenes in nature? So that's for Guamtech. Do you believe? So this is the difference between a deistic God and a theistic God. TH versus D. So a deistic God is, what Stephen Colbert is talking about, the God of Spinoza, the God of Einstein, that there, again, what I was just saying, that there could be a first mover, but you can't, you can pray to this God, but this God doesn't have the power to reach in and change the laws of physics. And so if somebody is going to die of cancer and you pray to this God, that God does not have the power to reach in and change the course of whatever is going to happen. So that's the deistic God would be the one that doesn't have that power. And the theistic God would be like Yahweh, that Christians and Christians, the Abrahamic religions believe in. Holly said, true, good point. The whole idea of hypothesis as well is very interesting. Yeah, I think this is, I remember hearing the word hypothesis and using this in like 4th grade science, but I wonder how much people actually think about this stuff as they go forth in life. Because we don't do science experiments that often, but we do learn by testing things and essentially doing science. We just don't take notes and do it as formally as that. But if you have the understanding that, okay, this is the thing I think, and I want to make sure that this is at least, if not certain, at least I have a reason to believe this, then you want to prove the opposite, or try to prove the opposite. Zippy said, in my opinion, God and physics/evolution can easily work in harmony. The problem is more man is finite, looking at the infinite. The infinite is beyond us. Fair enough. Hey, we got King Nirvana in the building. Welcome to the party. I was in Vegas, actually. Yes, you do know. You know for sure. For sure. Or was I? No, I was definitely in Vegas, for sure. Hey, we got P-Clam in the building. Welcome to the party. Said, newest science hypothesizes gravity as a medium. Changes a lot. Time being just a medium. Yeah, a lot of this stuff at this level, we don't really know what we're dealing with. We have the formula for how everything works, but what we plug into that formula, we're still working on it. So that's why I go with the theory. Religion is just an evolution of human concepts and understanding. So everything we know of God is lacking at best and misused at worst. I would completely agree with you. Completely. Covering my tracks well. You gotta make sure. I don't even want to joke. Not because like, oh my God, we can't joke about that. But like, I don't need the FBI or CIA showing up here. Shout out to GNX. Welcome to the party. Said, I'm late to the chat, but I'm a young earth creationist because the Bible says so. Okay, fair enough. So if I want to be of the same opinion as you, then why would I take the Bible as an authority? That would be the starting point. I would love to be able to be sure about this stuff, but I don't see a reason why the Bible would be taken as a book that is higher than any other book. But if you can tell me why, I would love to hear that. So let's yeah, right. So speaking of God, we are diving in with Anselm for God.
It's about time we had a serious talk about religion. The philosophy of religion is often confused with theology, which makes sense because they both take God and religion as their subjects. But theology starts with assuming that God exists and then figures out what follows, where theology might try to solve philosophical problems that might arise from a belief in God. But one thing that's never on the table in theology is simply not believing in God. Atheism is not an option. That's
called dogma. It should always be an option. If you are right about the fact that God does exist, then being wrong about that should be an option. It has to be an option, and it is an option. It's a great option. I love it.
The table in theology is simply not believing in God. Atheism is not an option. That's what separates the philosophical study of religion from the theological. Philosophers take nothing as a given, and that includes religious belief. Everything is on the table, and everything needs an argument. So no area of belief is sacred, and that means even your sacred beliefs are going to need to be examined, and evidence will need to be given. Some people say that religion is the one area where you don't need arguments, that faith alone is enough. But
that is called special pleading. This is the way that we understand everything in the universe except this one little thing that I want to keep safe, because if you actually scrutinize it, it's going to fall apart.
philosophers don't take faith for an answer. After all, I might have faith that the moon is made of green cheese. So what? Faith is definitionally unprovable, which makes it, from a philosophical perspective, not valuable.
Not valuable. Gen X said, the Jews are proof that the Bible is true. God promised to Abraham that his seed will be a blessing to all nations, and the Jews have won more Nobel Prizes in fulfillment of that prophecy. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So the fact that more Jews than any other group or identity group, whatever, have won Nobel Prizes is proof that the Bible is true? Is that your position?
So if you're a theist, now's the time to offer some justifications for your beliefs. And if you're an atheist, it's time for you to pay attention too. No one's off the hook. We all need to pay attention to these arguments because religion is hugely important. Can you think of many things that have been as influential in shaping human history than religious belief?
I cannot. P-Clap said, what I said is the opposite. We don't have math. At the moment, we think mass creates gravity. New one says mass falls into gravitational holes, I guess you'd say, gravitational holes. That begs the question, where the holes came from, since there was nothing. I don't know. Yeah, and again, so Holly, do not feel bad about not having this, just like all figured out. Even the people at the top of their industry do not have it all figured out. Hey, shout out to Am, who I guilted into coming through, even though she's working. Thank you so very, very much for being here. Welcome. We are diving into the arguments for God. We were just talking about what knowledge is, a justified true belief, and that if a claim cannot be tested, then it doesn't have much value.
Hugely important. Can you think of many things that have been as influential in shaping human history than religious belief? Probably not. So if we can get to the bottom of it, we should.
Even that statement, if we could get to the bottom of it, we should. Does anybody disagree? If you don't disagree, then how is just saying, yep, the Bible is right? How is that getting to the bottom of it? The FTBA.
I'll get to God in a minute, but first I want to go over a few things that the philosophy of religion is not. It's not about believing whatever your parents taught you, because that doesn't prove anything about the truth of a religious belief. If how you were raised proved something about religious truth, then every religion, and therefore also no religion, would be true. So how you were raised can give you a reason that you hold a certain belief, but it says nothing whatsoever about its truth. Philosophy of religion is also not the study of the Bible, because you can't use what's written in a book to prove the truth of the book.
Facts. Let's see that one more time.
Not the study of the Bible, because you can't use what's written in a book to prove the truth of the book. You need outside evidence. There's also a whole area of scholarship devoted to understanding the Bible by considering the time and place in which it was written, and such study can be very helpful in understanding certain things about religion. But it doesn't help us here. Philosophy of religion is also not religious anthropology or religious sociology or psychological understanding of our reasons for religious.
So you can see this is quite an extensive list of what the philosophy of religion is not. It is not just believing whatever your parents say. It's not studying what's in the Bible. It's not religious, any of these things. It's specifically the validity of the claims that are made within the religion. So GNX said the Jews make up less than 0.2 of the population, but represent 22% of all Nobel laureates. This is a fulfillment of God's prophecy through Abraham. He will bless all nations. Okay. So how did you what is there something in the Bible, or is there something else that says that there will be, like, you said a fulfillment of God's prophecy through Abraham. So what was the prophecy through God's Abraham that then would equal 22% of Nobel laureates being Jewish?
Belief, those are all wonderful things that you can and should study, but they are not what we're studying here. What we are doing is considering whether we can offer arguments in support of belief in God's existence. And a long time ago, there was a man who argued that God's existence is provable. 11th century French monk Anselm of Canterbury.
Shout out to Anselm. P-Cloud says the Bible is not wrong, but its texts have been handpicked and at times probably mistranslated. Decent source, but meh. And I mean, this is what frustrates me, is because there's a lot of great stuff in the Bible about how you should live your life, how you should how you should treat other people, so on and so forth. But I just don't understand why there's a need to look at it as a strictly historical book or a strictly scientific book. Why can't it just be a book of philosophy? And the things that were said were believed by the people at the time, but it's the tenets, the ideas, the concepts that actually matter, that we want people to behave Christ-like. I don't get it. Shout out to Ayush Gupta. Welcome. So, I don't know, man. Palestinians are not feeling so blessed lately. Well, they did just the UN court did just what's the word? I guess denounce or categorize or whatever the word is. But they said that Israel is an apartheid state. So I don't know. I don't know what that means. Well, I do. I mean, I don't know what that means for the Palestinians and for the future, but at least one on their scoreboard. Welcome to the party, brother. Nirvana says, every time I type a question, I think may be sort of deep about things. I wonder about the world we live in. I delete it in fear I sound like a damn fool, and I probably am. Hell no, brother. Maybe you are a damn fool. We're all damn fools. There's only one way to be less of a damn fool, is to ask those questions. Maybe sometimes you're going to look stupid. Is being stupid better than looking stupid? Of course not. And you know that you have honest intentions when you're asking questions. So maybe there's people who are going to be dicks about it. I would just say, don't ask those people. But you absolutely should be asking questions that about things that you don't understand. That's the only way to get over the hump of feeling like you don't deserve to ask these questions, to realize that not only do other people have these questions, but most people don't even think about the questions in the first place. To have the question in the first place puts you ahead of the curve. So I'm not gonna drizzle, but I'll dilly to you. Why don't you keep your head up, kid, and ask those damn questions. Zibby said, the Bible is nothing more than a collection of culture and history and probable fiction. When you turn such a collection into a religion, it's gonna be screwy. Yep. But church and state build nations, and thus the songs go on. They built nations. We can definitely build without the dogma. We just haven't evolved past that yet. All right. Drizzle, baby. I'm in my soft guy era. And yeah, so I think a lot of you feel this way about, having to be in the chat and only being able to communicate through text. Hey, if things, at least here, I don't know about other channels. Well, I do know about other channels where they maybe, you'll get a chat addressed, maybe not. But here, the conversation with you guys is the whole reason that I'm here. And so if you ask something and it doesn't make sense, then myself or the other people will help you find what the actual question, the right question that you want to ask is. If there's an answer to be given, an answer. And if we don't know, then you can feel comforted in the fact that the same thing you don't know, we don't know either. GNX said another prophetic line of evidence. Hold on. We're still on the prophecy. So before we jump past that, you know this stuff already. I'm trying to learn. So you said that the Nobel laureate percentage is a fulfillment of God's prophecy. So I'm just asking, what was that prophecy that we can say, oh, the fact that there's 22% of Nobel laureates being Jewish lines up with the prophecy? What is the prophecy?
That God's existence is provable. 11th century French monk Anselm of Canterbury. He offered a deductive argument for the existence of God based
For I believe, oh god damn it. For I believe, unless I believe, I will not understand. Or for I believe this, unless I believe, I will not understand.
Based on what he understood to be the nature of God's being, or the definition of God. Because the study of being is called ontology, his argument and others like it are called ontological arguments. Now, what do you think God is like? Long, flowing white beard, robe to match, nice guy, hard to reach on the phone. Well, Anselm aimed a little bit higher. In fact, he thought God is, by definition, the best possible thing we can imagine.
So that's our starting point. That's our starting point for Anselm. That the best thing that you could possibly imagine equals God. Now, already, the issue with that I see is, what if I have a more I have more imagination than you do? What are you believing in? Because you can't even think of you can't even imagine what I have in my head. So clearly you're not worshiping God because you can't even conceive of what you're worshiping. Zippy says, tinfoil hat mode. IP rights is the current dominating religion of the world. But it's not IP as much as the monopolies and lawfare created around it. Kind of like how the church abuses religion. I still need to sit down with you and have that IP rights discussion. But I think I'm starting to figure it out, and I think you might be right. Shout out to Smash, said, "Oh, you're beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. I know, I get it all the time. Where were we? P-Clav said prophetic evidence is not evidence. I eat Molly by the handful. Well, you're in for a good night. For a good night.
He thought God is, by definition, the best possible thing we can imagine. The best thing. Just try to think of the coolest, awesomest, most amazing and wonderful thing you can imagine, and whatever you're thinking of, Anselm said that God is better. He's just the best. In Anselm's words,
that sounds so gay. It's just like the best thing, but the bester than the best. Come on, bro. But yeah, I am completely with Guamtech here. Absolutely. Anyone who holds your lack of knowledge against you is an asshole. We are all fallible. Yeah, everyone's fallible. Then it's something we shouldn't be self-conscious about. Exactly. Well said, sir. Zippy said, nature is what I'd imagine when I think of God. It's kind of scary. I mean, yeah, I kind of agree. It is scary, and it is not necessarily so fantastical, but it is a beautiful system that, I mean, I'm right there with you. I am right there with you.
And whatever you're thinking of, Anselm said that God is better. He's just the best. In Anselm's words, God is that than which no greater can be conceived. So what does that mean? Well, it means
nothing. It means nothing, because as we determined in the last video, if your claim is not falsifiable, then it is not useful.
That God must exist, according to Anselm. After all, he pointed out there are just two ways in which something can exist. Something can exist only in our minds and be strictly imaginary, like Santa or unicorns, or it can exist in our minds but also in reality, like pizza and horses. Something that we can imagine, but that's also real.
Okay, pretty easy enough. Something that's imaginary, but it exists. This is what I was talking about with Ross Geller, that Ross Geller is in the first category. Oh, Smash, why'd you delete your post? You don't want to stand behind that? You don't stand behind that? Of course, it's always the MMA guys. It's always the MMA people. What was I gonna say? GNX said, quote, all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Jewish chemist Fritz Haber synthesized nitrogen allowing. So all peoples on earth will be blessed through you means that Jewish people are going to be 22% of Nobel laureates? How do you make that work for me? I'm willing to entertain this, but I'm asking you for the connecting piece between, okay, we have the prophecy. Okay, all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Okay. But then why wouldn't every Nobel laureate be Jewish? 22% ain't even a quarter. So, or then you would need all Jewish people to be Nobel laureates. So this does not connect to that. Who is all the people on earth? I don't understand how this has anything to do with the Nobel Prize. Maybe I'm stupid, but I don't know. I don't think it connects. I said, shit, me too. Have you done poppers? Because it's falsifiably. Because falsifiability is popperian. Poppers like the sniff things? No, I've never done those. I don't know what you are talking about here. Zippy said the universe is kind of fantastical and beautiful. It's not glorious. The universe lives in us, heavy metals and such, and we live in it.
Yeah.
I agree. And you said there's no difference between the two. All existence is in our consciousness. And so, yeah, when we try to tackle this type of thought, that existence is all, we are not there yet. We have to build up. Okay, how do we determine what is existence, what is consciousness? And here we're just on the beliefs, the notion of belief and knowledge itself. But I would agree with you. As much as I agree with Zippy. But, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Beggars can't be choosers. And so I think it boils down to intuitive thinkers versus analytical thinkers. Intuitive thinkers tend to believe in God because they don't require proof to know. Analytical thinkers tend not to believe. Agreed. And I mean, that's kind of, it's not going to be straight down the line of everybody who is more intuitive thinker is going to be religious and vice versa. But I agree, on a balance of probabilities. Stevenson, Karl Popper came up with the concept of falsifiability. Yep, that's what we were talking about. The gotcha. Okay, gotcha. A little slow. Went right over my head. That's actually a good joke. I just missed it. But all right, let's dive back in.
And be strictly imaginary, like Santa or unicorn.
Or Ross Geller.
Or it can exist in our minds, but also in reality, like pizza and horses.
Or the show Friends.
Something that we can imagine, but that's also real. Anselm pointed out, and he does appear to be right about this, that any good thing would be better if it existed in reality as well as in our minds. I mean, unicorns, they're pretty great, but wouldn't they be better if they were real? Or the perfect romantic partner?
Would unicorns actually be better if they were real? Now, technically, unicorn, at least according to the Bible, a unicorn is actually referring to a rhinoceros. So a unicorn actually does exist. I go with leprechauns. But I don't know that a unicorn would necessarily be, I think it's better because it's a concept. But I don't know. That's neither here nor there. Glumtech says, hell yeah, I'm okay with being an intuitive thinker. I like being a mutant in X-Men. I was just born with decent smarts. There ya go. If you said pineapple pizza is not real, it cannot hurt me. Well, unless you're allergic to pineapple. First part is wrong. Second part is right. And if you get a good Hawaiian pizza, it is good. I know. I know. I don't know, but I strongly believe based on the justified evidence of how goddamn good pineapple on pizza is and how many people enjoy salted caramel, chocolate covered pretzels that are salted, the salt and sweet tea is sweet and salty mix. I would bet that 60%, at least 60% of people who are online, oh my God, pineapple on pizza is the worst thing ever, have never had it. I would bet they've never had it. It's not the best thing in the world. It's not something I'm going to order every time. But if you got some, if you're getting, we're at a pizza party and you got plain, you got pepperoni, you got pineapple, then I'm taking one of each. I'm taking one of each. Anyway, Stephen Colbert said everyone has to think both faster, more intuitively, and slower, more analytically and deliberately. As psychologist Dan something taught us. There you go. Yeah, I think that's kind of the paradox of like when you're in a situation where there's a lot of adrenaline. Simultaneously, it feels like things speed up, but they also feel like it lasts forever. Like we were just watching the video when I went skydiving, and the 57 seconds of free fall, and it feels like an eternity because you're literally falling out of the sky, but you also it's over like that. And so this is kind of a similar concept, but how you need to address your thinking, where you need to be able to be more intuitive, and it just kind of flows, and be able to operate more on autopilot, but to be able to slow things down and differentiate when am I on autopilot and when do I need to slow down, all that kind of stuff. Well said, sir. Very well said. Hey, we got shout out to Zippy over on Rumble with a Rumble rant. Said sending love to Seabass. I have a feeling he'll be back. I think he's bothering some other people. I know I've seen him. Well, you guys are over. You're over in Front Porch Conservative all the time. Is he still over there? I don't know. One of these days, I'm sure we'll see him again. But yeah, going back to that, it definitely, it's a question of how much time you have to make a decision. And if you're in a situation where you need to make a quick decision, that your intuitive, like your default intuitive choice needs to be strong. You need to have that strong intuition. But you don't get there without having this strong analytical mind and being prepared for that. GNX said the other 65% of Nobel laureates are Christian. They also claim to believe in the God of Abraham. How is this not a fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham? Because winning a Nobel Peace Prize is not any measure of, is that, why are we using that as the measure of being blessed? And so even still, if we accept that the Nobel Prize is the metric, then still, no. What's the first two words of this thing? It says all peoples. Do all people have a Nobel Prize? Then what are we talking about? If being blessed means winning a Nobel Prize, and the prophecy is that all peoples on earth will be blessed, then all peoples, not just the good ones, right?
Pretty great. But wouldn't they be better if they were real? Or the perfect romantic partner? Smart, funny, hot, likes the same movies and games that you do, pretty rich, would be pretty nice in your mind, but even better if they actually existed. Well, Anselm thought so too. And from there, he believed he could prove God's existence. Because if we define God as the greatest thing that we can conjure up in our minds, the only thing that could possibly be greater than him would be a real version.
Oof. So we already see the paradox. If God is the greatest thing we can conjure up, and everything that we can that has a concept would be better in real as a real version, then we can't have a God, because as good as we could imagine, then a real version would be better, and so that would have to be the God. And so then a real version, and you're just in an infinite loop. How am I shifting the goalposts? I'm asking you how the prophecy is answered by the Nobel Peace Prize. The prophecy says all peoples will be blessed. There is no all people who have anything. What goalposts have I moved? You're the one that moved the goalpost. It said, well, it's, the other 65. You're the one who brought up 22% of Jews. And even still, we're only talking. So what about the other 12% or 13% of people? I thought it was all peoples. Don't get mad at me. You're just saying the wrong things. You said all peoples, and then you gave an example that was not all peoples. Sorry, I didn't make you wrong. Context says, if you're going to have pineapple on pizza, for God's sake, please use prosciutto. Thank me later. And I'm going to assume, caramelized onions. I mean, maybe outside of Jersey, maybe outside of the tri-state area, you got to, but they know how to make pizza over here. They say it's in the water, but no, I think just regular pineapple and ham is good in Jersey. Maybe something else. Chat images? What are chat images? If you have something that you want me to pull up, you can drop it in the Discord if that's what you're asking. Pclav said also Jews, Christians, and Muslims believe in the same God but disagree on prophets. Correct. I don't know what that means. Who says reality is greater than fantasy though? Did somebody say that? I'm trying to think if I would disagree anyway. But did somebody say that? Where did we hear that reality or that fantasy has to be greater than reality? I would just intuitively think that fantasy would be better than reality because there's always negatives to reality, but fantasy you can just imagine them away. But where is this coming from? I say an imaginary God is greater, so God then must be imaginary. Well, that's what this is saying exactly. Hey, we got Rowan in the building. Welcome to the party. So I think consciousness without ego or self is God. So that's so this is more of a deistic approach. Am I right then? So you don't necessarily believe God is a separate entity that is there's us and then there's God. You think that when you use the word God, it's just that which is the connective tissue. Is that kind of in the right realm? GNX said, through Abraham will all peoples be blessed, not vice versa. Okay, so I haven't been blessed by Abraham. So game over. What are we talking about? Am I not part of all peoples? Or I am part of all peoples? How do I know if I've been blessed or not? Because you were bringing up Nobel Prize, being a Nobel laureate. I am not a Nobel laureate. I believe that I am part of people. So if all peoples will be blessed, and blessed means get a Nobel Prize, I have not. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't gotten a Nobel Prize. So if this is the prophecy, then no, this has not happened. Indian Jesus is the 65% of the one true God, even without a Nobel Prize. There we go. I'm 65% of blessed. Hey, look what we got. We got Little Toes in the building. Welcome to the party. And yeah, man, I hear you. And that is why this is more about this is more than just the videos that we're doing. We had a long personal deep conversation helping little Toes through some personal stuff, and we're a family in Discord. And so but you'll be all right, kid. You'll be all right. Just listen to me next time. Welcome to the party. Piglav said Christians believe Jesus was a personification and aspect of God. They did not dismiss or delegate to separate God from Jesus. So God equals Jesus equals Allah, according to that. True. Zibi said, look at the universe, all its majesty and horror. Now think of a human man who can sling fireballs. Reality has a strange way of being wild, except when I don't know what that says. Yes, I believe in the universe. Indeed, I do, because I can see it. It's here. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe in what I see. I said, nah, bro, we're all robots. Only Jews are peoples. Comment of the night. Comment of the night. It still doesn't fulfill the prophecy, but still comment of the night. The fulfillment of that prophecy would then mean that every Jew would be a Nobel laureate. Rowan said, now I'm talking about the landscape of all possible minds as God. So you think I'm trying to talk about consciousness without saying specifically consciousness, but that is it. Okay, so would we agree that when you say consciousness, you mean the emergent function of the mind? And so then, if so, you're saying that emergent function of the mind that exists outside of the physical brain and the self, that's what you're calling God? Am I getting closer? I'm trying. P-Clav said Muslims do not agree to Jesus equals Allah, but God equals Allah. Yeah. GNX said the pizza ingredients you ate were most likely grown from synthetic nitrogen made by a discovery of Jewish chemist Fritz Haber. That's how you are blessed through Abraham. Oh, okay. So I legitimately am speechless. So being able to eat pineapple is what we're talking about. So what if you're allergic to pineapple? Because my sister's allergic to pineapple. It's silly. Come on, man. Come on. All right, let's dive back in here.
And from there, he believed he could prove God's existence. Because if we define God as the greatest thing that we can conjure up in our minds, the only thing that could possibly be greater than him would be a real version. And since we're already imagining the greatest thing possible, there can't be anything better, therefore God has to exist both in imagination and in reality. Anselm
Does he know?
was sure that he had done it, deductively proven God's existence in a way that was immune to error. Here it is one more time, laid out as a philosophical
I thought he was going to go to the rebuttal
argument. God is the greatest thing we can think of. Things can exist only in our imaginations, or they can also exist in reality. Things that exist in reality are always better than things that exist only in our imaginations. If God existed only in our imaginations, he wouldn't be the greatest thing that we can think of, because God in reality would be better. Therefore, God must exist in reality.
They always pull the image off the screen. So let's go over this again. So God is the greatest thing we can think of. So that's step one. God is the greatest thing we can think of. Of course, you all know what my first question would be. How do you know that? But we'll put that aside. So God is the greatest thing we can think of. Things can only exist in our imaginations, or they can exist in reality. So the options are only in our imagination, or in our imagination and reality. That's step two. Step three is things that exist in reality are always better than things that exist only in our imaginations. So if it's only in our imagination, if all else being the same, if it only is in our imagination versus in our imagination and reality, Anselm is saying that the reality one is always better. Then we go to if God existed only in our imaginations, he wouldn't be the greatest thing that we could think of, because God in reality would be better. Therefore, God must exist in reality. So that's again, we're not looking at do we have historical physical evidence for God. It's a philosophical argument. It's saying we're trying to use this logic. And so if God existed, then yeah, that would be right. But you're begging the question and saying God exists and saying God is the greatest thing we can think of. Well, that's the question. What is God, or does God exist? That's the question. You can't assert that in your answer. I do think orange on pizza would probably be a little bit weird, but it's just, that's what's gotten popular, online. It's cool to be like, oh my God, he's bet you eat pineapple on pizza. What a loser. It's just, you clearly have never had good Hawaiian pizza. That's it. We all know that sweet and salty go well together. GNX said, I'm sure a Jewish chemist has synthesized an antihistamine if you're allergic to pineapple. So I just, like, this is so far away from anything that I think a normal person would consider divine. The fact that a person existed and did a thing and that had effects on my life, that's a blessing. That's just things happening. That's just a thing that happened. Yikes. Lilto said, God really is the greatest thing anyone could think of. Do you not agree? No, I do not agree, because I don't think that God exists. I thought you need that. Hawaiian pizza slaps. Jews also killed Christ. All right. And Christ was a Jew. All right. Now that we got that out of our systems.
God in reality would be better, therefore God must exist in reality. Anselm thought this was a tidy little argument, but one of his contemporaries, a fellow French monk named Guanelot, wasn't satisfied. He suggested that we could run the same line of reasoning to prove the existence of literally anything we can imagine. He came up with an argument with the exact same formal structure as Anselm's to prove that a mythical lost island exists. He proposed the best island I can imagine is one where I can swim and relax on a tropical beach and ski down snow-covered mountains all in one afternoon. I can imagine it, so it must exist. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the best island. There would be one better, and that one would have to be real. Basically, Guanelot said, you could make the same kind of argument to prove the existence of whatever you most wanted, but it wouldn't make it real. Anselm responded to Guanelot's criticism by saying that he'd missed the point, that the argument only works for necessary beings, of which there is only one.
Again, begging the question. It only works for the things that I want it to work for. Come on, bro.
God. Folks, what we have right here is a classic example of the fallacy known as begging the question. A fallacy...
Called it! Well, so said, not asking if you believe God is real or not, just saying the thought of him. I don't... Okay, what do you think of the cat that's sitting on top of your house right now? I'm not asking if there is a cat or if there's not a cat. I'm asking, what is your emotional state regarding that cat? You see how that doesn't make sense? You don't have an emotional state. You don't have thoughts of that cat. That cat does not exist. So in my mind, there is no him to have a thought of. That's not how I see the world. GNX said the Bible is historical evidence for God. Adam, Abraham, David, Moses, Isaiah all saw God. Whatever. You're committing a category error if you want empirical evidence for that. And that is what we call cope. No, this is special pleading. The existence of God shall be determined by the existence of any other thing. And that is by empirical evidence. So you can claim that, oh, well, we can't know about God through empirical evidence. Okay, then how do you know that God exists? How do you know that? How do you know that? Explain to me how you know this statement is true.
God. Folks, what we have right here is a classic example of the fallacy known as begging the question. A fallacy is a flaw in reasoning, something that weakens or destroys an argument, and when you beg the question, you assume the very thing you're trying to prove with your argument. By adding this idea of a necessary being to his definition of God, Anselm makes God's existence a part of the definition of God.
Exactly. When you smuggle in the definition, that is as I like to call it, semantic obfuscation.
Necessary being is one that must exist, so Anselm's response assumed the very point of contention to be true, that God exists. Other philosophers since Anselm have tried to save his argument by tweaking it in various ways, and dissenters have continued trying to deflate them. One of the most famous objections came hundreds of years after Anselm's time, from the 18th.
How do you know that? How do you know that? You're just saying that. How justify that? Let's say I'm wrong and you're right. Okay, prove it to me.
Trying to deflate them. One of the most famous objections came hundreds of years after Anselm's time, from the 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant. Kant
Can't stop, won't stop.
offered the point that, as he put it, existence is not a predicate. A predicate is just something that's said of another object. And Kant thought Anselm's mistake was in thinking that existence is something that can be predicated upon a thing or used as a defining characteristic. For example, if a triangle exists, it necessarily has three sides, but it could be that no triangle exists at all because the idea of existence isn't part of how we define a triangle.
Right. So if a triangle exists, then we can say it necessarily has three sides. But we don't know that any particular triangle exists. I look at all creations too. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. How do you know what God is like, and how do you know what that cat is like? That is the question. Looking at, I can look at this mug. That doesn't give me an emotional connection to the mug. I can look at this coaster. It doesn't give me an emotional connection to the coaster, nor prove that it has any bearing beyond what it is. So I'm not even asking for that. I'm just asking for the existence. How do you know that either of these things do or do not exist? For all you know, remember we talking about the 420 geese? For all you know, there is a random cat on your roof right now. You don't know that. You are making claims that you do not know. And this is exactly the same thing. If God exists, it necessarily has three sides, right? God, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus. But it could be that no triangle exists at all.
No triangle exists at all because the idea of existence isn't part of how we define a triangle. Likewise,
Yeah, and people have emotional connections to cutting off their dick. What point does that make?
Kant would say, if God exists, then he must be the greatest being that we can imagine, but that does not mean that he does exist. Predicates add to the essence of their subjects, Kant explained, but they can't be used to prove their existence. British philosopher John Wisdom came up with a thought exercise that sounds a lot like a debate over an ontological argument. It's called The Parable of the Invisible Gardener, which brings us to this week's Flash Philosophy.
All right, the thought bubble, and beat you to it, Zibby, beat you to it.
Let's go to the thought bubble. Person A and Person B return to a garden after a long absence and notice that a few of its plants are still thriving. Person A says a gardener must have been tending the garden while they were gone.
Okay, so we have a garden, we've been to the garden, we left the garden, we came back to the garden. And it's different. So red guy says a gardener must have done something while we were gone.
Person B doubts this is true, so they agree to wait and see if a gardener shows up. After some time passes, they see no one, so Person A says the gardener must be invisible. So they put up traps and bring in bloodhounds to catch him. When no one is found, Person A says the gardener must be intangible as well as unsmellable. To which B replies, what's the difference between an invisible, intangible, unsmellable, entirely undetectable gardener and no gardener at all?
And I'll take it one step further, and of course, this is an analog for God. What's the difference between an invisible, intangible, unsmellable, entirely undetectable God and no God at all? I mean, nothing in my life. Shout out to Zippy DSM Lee over with the Rumble Rant. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So the cup has the face of God on it. Eat it up, eat it up, eat it up. That's right. Every donation comes with a treat for my co-host, Morty. Thank you, thank you, thank you, sir. And I don't know, you think? I need to get those sunglasses back. I'm so mad. Like, I don't understand. This picture was taken on the way from Dissident Dialogues to my car. And I was streaming. I took this picture and then I streamed. And then I got in the car. And the glasses are gone. I don't know what happened. Who's I forget who is there go my priors in Discord. What am I looking at? Oh, is that okay, we'll come back to that in a second. So let's finish this one up and then we'll come back to what you got there. Did we get this? God has revealed himself in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. It is a historical event as recorded in the Bible. How do you know the Bible is accurate? Facts. Context said maybe God is undetectable, but his blessings are felt. How do you know they're from him? Maybe you're just a lucky guy. How do you know that that's not the case? You don't. You just don't. So let's go back in here. So again, we're going, we went to we went through the garden and it looked one way. And we left and we came back and it looked different. So Red Shirt said it must have been a gardener. So they stayed there and waited. No gardener came. And so, oh, well, he must be invisible. So they did a bunch of stuff that they could still detect him even if he's invisible. Nothing. Then intangible, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. What is the difference between an invisible, intangible, unsmellable, entirely undetectable God and no God at all? Shout out to Mind Delusion. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Good to see ya. Good to see ya. GNX said, how do we know the Bible is accurate? Archaeology and papyrology, but there's contradictions within the Bible. So which contradictions do we know are right or wrong? So which resurrection story is correct? So what's the difference?
Intangible, unsmellable, entirely undetectable gardener, and no gardener at all. Thanks, Thought Bubble.
Nothing.
Can you guess who A and B are really talking about? To give you a sense of how long this back and forth has been going on among philosophers trying to either prove or disprove the existence of God, John Wisdom came up with this parable in 1944, nearly 1,000 years after Anselm and Guanilo. Today, we introduced a new area of philosophy of religion, and we learned about Anselm's argument for God's existence, while also considering objections to that argument. An important point to note here is that both Guanilo and Kant agreed with Anselm's conclusion. They also believed in God's existence. They just thought Anselm's argument didn't prove it. So remember, you can think an argument fails even if you accept the conclusion. When this happens, you should look for a better argument in favor of your conclusion. This is exactly what Thomas Aquinas did, and we'll consider him next time. Crash Course Philosophy is produced in association.
Beautiful. Okay, so that is a good start to how we can take the question of God and you have different answers, but engage in it more than, oh, well, it looks beautiful outside. Oh, the Bible said so. That's low frequency, low vibration thinking. You need to be better than that, especially if you don't want the Islamists to win. You don't got to worry about the atheists. You got to worry about the Islamists. And like I said, us atheists, or at least I'll have your back. But, facts. Faith is a hell of a drug, for sure. So, so I got, so who gave me this? Was it, who was talking about fast thinking and slow thinking? Was this P-Clav? Or Steven? You guys go by different names. I forget who you are in one or the other. But we have this, we were talking about fast thinking versus fast intuitive thinking versus slow and deliberate thinking. And so you can see that these are the two different types. And obviously you don't want to always be in one category or the other. You want to be able to balance and know when it's appropriate to take your time and think about things, and then have the ability, prepare yourself in those times to be able to think quickly, so that when you need to, it happens automatically. Good chart. I like it. Hey, we got equality. I always forget. Equality and deference because vagina. Welcome to the party. Yes, I think, is he next? Yeah, we're going straight up to Thomas Aquinas and the Kalam Cosmological Argument. So this is another well-defined argument for the existence of God that is out there, and people talk about it. Some people agree with it, some people disagree with it, and there's lots and lots of discussion about it. Where did I leave off here? GNX said, I recommend you read Alleged Discrepancies of the Bible by John Haley, where you find answers to your canards. Oh, yeah. So you're going to say that what contradiction? I just got a whole bunch of stuff for you. So I will take this and put it in the chat for you. But, you know, when there's this much, you should at least be aware of like one of them. And this is just the Gospels. This isn't the rest of the New Testament. Also, this is just the Gospels. Where are we? Mind Delusion said, quote, and whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be. I mean, if we're going to talk about God, that's about as far as I want to go. Dilly to that. Because this allows you to have whatever version of God that you want. And it doesn't require you to have me buy into your idea of God. For us both to be in the club of what you would say is going by God's plan or whatever. Love it. Well said. Well said. Hey, we got Ruthless Admin in the building. Welcome to the party. So, damn, I would have skipped Timcast. This is a much more interesting topic since they just talked in circles for 3/4 of the show. Well, this is only number 2. This is we're going through this entire playlist. It is 47 videos, and this is number 10. So Philosophy Fridays, guys. It is, until we finish this playlist, Philosophy Friday will be every Friday where we will be diving into this stuff. And it's not all about God, but it's all about philosophy. And this happens to be a little bit more on religion, but there's, you know, way bigger stuff. I don't know. I to be honest with you, if it works, it works. I don't know. I don't really use Twitch. Yeah. But I do have a free Discord server if you want to drop links in there. I'll drop the link for you here. That is the free Discord server. And yeah, if you drop some links there, I will definitely check it out. All right, where we at? GNX said, by the way, I loved your Gen X video. Thank you. There's a lot. I'm going to assume by your name that you're a Gen Xer, but a lot of Gen Xers did not like the video. And then complained that I should be saying the exact things that I did when I criticized the people in the TikToks, but that's neither here nor there. Thank you very, very much. All right. Thomas Aquinas and the cosmological arguments. Oh my goodness. Hold up. Wait a minute. Don't stop. Get it. Our boy, the Funk Master General, gifting out another 5 memberships. Let's give a little piece for each. 1. Well, I should have done 2. Well, that was 2 there. All right, well, I'm going to leave it here, and he's going to eat it. Thank you so very, very much. If any of you, I think you guys are all members already. Yeah, there you go. You got it all. I think you guys are all disciples in the Discord already. But if not, make sure you join the Discord, because as a member, you get access to the entire thing. The free link is just for, you know, the free chat and current events and stuff like that. But we have our own disciple chat, which is a little bit more private. And of course, the after party. As soon as we are done here, we are going over there, and you are not stuck behind your keyboard. You're actually on screen with me and everybody else. And it's just a really cool hangout. And if you're not familiar with what Discord is, I totally understand, you know, not wanting to download a new thing and be part of a new app. But it's very well self-contained, and it's basically just a well-organized group chat. So definitely check it out. And again, you know, it's only $2.99 a month. So even if you weren't given the membership, try it out. 1 month, $3. You don't like it, then you're good. Thank you again, the Funk Master General. We also got our boy Karl Johansson in the building. Indeed, it is Philosophy Night. welcome to the party. All right, finally diving in. Thank you, Equality and Deference. You have a good one. Finally diving in here with Thomas Aquinas and the Cosmological Argument.
Nothing gets people talking like proving the existence of God. Just look at the comments on our last video. And that is what Anselm of Canterbury did. He claimed in the 11th century to have come up with a deductive proof of God's existence through what we now know as the ontological argument. And if there was such a thing as a social network of medieval Christian philosophers back then, it was positively abuzz with the news for a long time. Because almost 200 years later, Italian theologian and philosopher Thomas Aquinas encountered Anselm's argument. But, like many others, he just didn't buy it. Aquinas did believe in
I said, shit, me too.
God. It was just that, as a philosopher, he felt that it was important to have evidence for your beliefs. He knew that if he was
said, shit, me too.
going to dismiss Anselm's argument, he'd need to come up with something better. So he set out to construct 5 arguments that would prove God's existence once and for all. Yeah, 5. Apparently he was concerned that 1 wasn't gonna do it, so he figured that out of 5, 1 was bound to stick.
Maybe. So a beautiful question from GNX. Do I have any evidence that atheism is true? Atheism is not a claim. It is a lack thereof. So the burden of proof is not on me. Atheism is simply the answer to when somebody asks, do you believe in a God or gods? I just say no. So do I have evidence of that? Yes. I know in my mind, when I think about a God, I don't have a belief in it. That's what atheism is. That's all atheism is. So it's not true or false. Do you have evidence that liking Marvel is true?
What?
That's not how we talk about things. Yes, I'm an agnostic atheist, as we've talked about many times before, but love to go over. So thank you again for the opportunity. Gnosticism in the context of religion refers to knowledge, as we just talked about in the earlier video, a justified true belief. And so do I know whether a God exists or not? No, I don't know. But do I believe? Do I have a belief? Not affirm, but a conscious belief in a God or gods? No, I don't. So that makes me an agnostic atheist. I'm also an anti-theist. I think that religion is very, 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 very bad for society, and that we need to evolve beyond it. But that doesn't affect the level of certainty that I have, which is very low, about whether or not a God exists. And so none of us know. I think we should all be agnostic, whether you're theist or deist or atheist. You should be agnostic. But yes, I'm an agnostic atheism. I'm an agnostic atheist. That's how words work. Grumtag said Aquinas is such a badass name. The sound of it is the audio equivalent of a punch in the face. Thomas Aquinas, the badass. Carl said you cannot prove God exists. That's the whole point of faith. Until he speaks to you, it won't happen. And then the psychologists and atheists will consider you a schizophrenic. True. Isn't bad a religious term? It may have started out that way, but I don't reject the notion of Christian values. So that which Christianity says is generally, of course, that or rather, I guess, the spectrum of morality from evil to good. I don't reject that. I just reject the truth claim that there is a being that's called God that's doing all the stuff. So I'm very, even though I think religion itself is bad, it's because of the dogma, not because of the beliefs, not because of the rituals, not because of the values. It's the unwavering adherence to a belief that will not be questioned and is sheltered by special pleading. That everything else in the world, everything else in the universe, rather, we determine by evidentiary standards, except this thing because we want to feel good. That's how I see it.
He was giving arguments that would prove God's existence once and for all. Yeah, 5. Apparently he was concerned that 1 wasn't going to do it, so he figured that out of 5, one was bound to stick. His first 4 arguments are known together as the cosmological arguments, as they seek to prove God's existence through what he argued were necessary facts about the universe. So in keeping with the method that we discussed in our very first episode, we're going to examine these first 4 arguments of Thomas Aquinas and really try to understand them. And then we'll consider their merits and their weaknesses.
DFTBA, who's got it? It's right there. DFTBA, who's got it? Who's got it? And guys, we are almost at the 2.5 hour mark. So if you would like to keep the party raging, you know how to do it.
Maybe the most striking thing about the cosmological arguments of Aquinas, at least to modern eyes, is that some of them are firmly based in the natural world. Even though he lived in a pretty unscientific time, Aquinas argued for the existence of God through his understanding of science, and with the help of what he thought was physical evidence. For example, the first of his cosmological arguments is known as the argument from motion. In it, Aquinas observed that we currently live in a world in which things are moving.
Okay, that's number 1. Things are moving.
He also observed that movement is caused by movers, things that cause motion. Aquinas was convinced that everything that's moving must have been set into motion by something else that was moving. By this logic, something must have started the motion in the first place.
So that's the argument for motion, that anything that is in motion must have started moving at some point because of something else. So before we dive back into this, King Nirvana said, forgive me if you've answered this before. No problems. I am very happy to answer questions over and over and over again because I love to talk. King said, I was wondering if you've ever felt that there may be something like a God at times. Not Bible God, just generally what God may mean to you. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's not forget, first of all, that I grew up, I was born into the Catholic Church and confirmed in the Methodist Church. So until I was 20-ish years old, the idea that a God could be non-existent wasn't something that would fit with my worldview. So yes, but when I, going through the contradictions in the Bible, the contradictions in, this all loving God and the way that, things worked out and could work a lot better, to put it succinctly, I just realized that feeling that I have was not fake. That feeling that I have was not ever something that didn't exist. All it ever was something else. And so I do believe that a spiritual realm exists. I just don't think that we have a good understanding of what it is. So that same feeling that when I was in church and I thought I was feeling God, I still have that feeling at times. And this is going to sound cheesy as fuck. It's going to sound cheesy as fuck. But it's you guys. The most common, and I mean, maybe it's not, I'm not like in ecstasy, but I feel part of something bigger when I'm here. Like I'm just in my house. It is silent. And I'm sitting in a chair just talking. But yet all of this is here. And so that to me is what you're asking about. And I just don't think that you need to plug in God to explain that feeling, that association, that whatever you want to call it. I personally just don't feel like that's the case. Karl said, I think it can be proven by utilitarian standards that religion is best for society, whether God exists or not, pretty conclusively. Have you heard of the Inquisition or the Dark Ages? Shout out to Guam Tech for the $10 Venmo. Oh my goodness. I guess, I don't know. I'm getting Morty, it's right here, dude. It's right here. He's looking for it on the ground. There you go. We're getting down to the little pieces, so give him a bunch. There we go. There we go. Maybe I am blessed. Maybe I am blessed. I am certainly blessed by you guys, if not for God. And oh my goodness, right down the list, Zippy DSMLE with another Rumble rant. Said theism and traditionalism lead to tribal collectivism. The problem with collectivism is that it sacrifices the individual for the collective. It leads to corruption, comrade. Gulag nations are very bad. Very, very bad. Indeed. Well said. Beautifully, beautifully said. I'm gonna start that one. Well said, guys, and thank you. And of course, Guamtech, that makes you the new co-sponsor of the stream. Don't let me forget. As soon as we go back to the video. What we miss here? So yeah, just strong disagree. P-Clav said religion's advantages are undeniable. Warping and schisms are the con. Exactly. And so if we can have these values without the dogma and special pleading, then we're good. We're good. King said that makes sense because it's like, wow, things are sweet sometimes. Yeah. And like more than sweet, beautiful. Awe. I'm filled with awe. My first podcast was called the Awe Really Podcast, AWE. I was like, oh, really? Because that was the whole idea, is that those experiences, those spiritual experiences that I have, that you have, those aren't fake. Those are real as real could be. But are we sure they're from God? And I'm pretty sure that they're not. Hey, look who we got. Our boy Nick Lou Ketty in the building. Welcome to the party. Oh, thank God, another atheist. I need another atheist, man. I need you. Glad to see you. Welcome to the party. All right, let's dive back in here. So we were talking about the argument from motion. Talking Thomas Aquinas and arguments for God. If something, everything, we live in a world which everything is moving. Movement is caused by movers, aka things that cause motion. So everything that's moving must have been set into motion by something else that was moving, aka the cause. And something must have started the motion in the first place. And he says that's God. And should I jump ahead? Well, okay. So I would just say, okay, well then what started God? But we'll get further into that. So
something else that was moving. By this logic, something must have started the motion in the first place. Otherwise, you'd be stuck in a philosophical quandary known as an infinite regress. You get an infinite regress when, in a chain of reasoning, the evidence for each point along the chain relies on the existence of something that came before it, which in turn relies on something even further back, and so on, with no starting point. Basically, Aquinas thought the very idea of infinite regress was absurd, logically impossible, because it implied that any given series of events began with nothing, or more accurately, never really began. Instead, it could have been going on forever. In the case of physical motion, Aquinas wanted to trace the cause of the movement he saw in the world all the way back to its beginning. And he figured there must have been a beginning. Otherwise, for him, it would be like watching these blocks fall and being told that nothing ever pushed over the first block. Instead, they had always been falling down forever, backward into eternity. There must have been a time when nothing was in motion, Aquinas thought, and there also must have been a static being that started the motion.
And again, I just say, why? How do you know that the universe isn't infinite in time? At this time, we didn't have the Big Bang Theory.
And that being, according to Aquinas, is God, the unmoved mover. So, his argument from motion ran something like this. Objects are in motion. Everything in motion was put into motion by something else. There can't be an infinite regress of movers, so there must be a first mover, itself unmoved. And that is God. Now,
so that's the start of the cosmological argument from motion. So let's grab some of these here. P-Clav said, moderate monotheistic society is way more stable than an atheist one. Now, in 100 years? Nope. Inquisition and such are warped. Yeah, that is inevitable with dogma. But yeah, that you're coming from. Do they even have a name for this bias? But the I'm going to call it the presency bias. The fact that you're only seeing things from today, as if today and the past 10,000 years is a good predictor of how the rest of humanity is going to go. In some ways, it might, but everything changes and evolves. GNX asked, where do I stand on the abortion issue? So I am legally, I don't trust the government to be the arbiter of morality. So I do want there to be exceptions in place legally that is between a woman and or a family rather and her doctor. But I do personally believe that life begins at conception and that it is murder and that it should be unthinkable. Definitely shouldn't be used as birth control. And again, when new DNA is created, that is a new human being. At what stage they are, a clump of cells or a zygote or an embryo or this or that. Those are all things that are stages of human being. And so I think if you are a human being, then you deserve personhood rights, at least and until you prove that you don't deserve them. King of Anas, and I'm glad to hear you don't rule out a sort of God for reasons I can't explain. I'm not a Christian. I just at first thought you may be dead set against the possibilities or whatever. I don't know what I mean. No, I know exactly what you mean. That there's a lot of Gnostic atheists. There's a lot of people who think that they know for sure that no God exists.
Stupid.
That's dumb. How the fuck would you know that? How the fuck would you know that? You can't possibly know that. And so this is where I get my believe nothing except that anything is possible. That covers everything. You're good. As long as you live your life, believe nothing except that anything is possible. Then you start from a how do they say Descartesian, or do they just say Cartesian? Either way, in the way of Descartes and saying I think therefore I am, and everything else has to be proven. You start there. You start with the fact that anything can be possible, and you rule out what doesn't make sense from there. Yeah, I think it's healthy to have that humility. Like the people who think that they know, it's just arrogant. Context of the problem for me with the question of who started God is that scientists are totally okay with saying there was nothing before the Big Bang. I guess not everything had to have a precursor. Yeah, I mean that's the issue with this this argument is that you're again begging the question that there had to be an unmoved first mover. You're making that claim, but you haven't shown that it cannot be that we have an infinite regress. Aquinas just doesn't like it, and none of us really like that that notion that it's something that we can't ever understand because it just goes to infinity. We don't like that. We like things that are tied up nicely in a bow and fit in a box. But it don't work that way. Hey, shout out to Christian Packard. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. So it's come to my attention that there are laws within all of mathematics, physics, and even within language and logic. There are laws that predate human comprehension. We discovered math, not invented it, which means there must be a mind beforehand. That's where you lose me. Because I want to say, in fact, it's actually damn near impossible that there isn't a God, which is why even Einstein believed in one, but he believed in a deistic God, which is not what you're talking about. But can you connect the fact that math exists and God exists? Because your argument here is math exists, therefore God exists. I don't think that is. I don't think you've made that argument. Nick said, actually, most scientists will be honest and tell you that they can tell you what happened to about 12.5 billion years ago, but they don't know a thing about what came before. Yeah, that's a much wider umbrella of people who are saying, well, I don't know what happened, quote unquote, before the Big Bang, as opposed to there was nothing. The next question is God personal or not? Is he a judge? I don't think he exists. So not a question for me. Also, it's like I am, therefore I think. Cogito ergo sum. That's Latin. In Latin, you reverse it. And it's not I am, therefore I think. It is literally the reason that I know I exist is because of the fact that I think. Not I think, and that proves the fact that, or not I exist, and that proves the fact that I think. So no, this is absolutely incontrovertibly wrong. Incontrovertibly wrong. Just because the words are in that order in a different language doesn't mean that like that's what that means. That's like saying, like carro rojo in Spanish actually means car red, not a red car.
What?
That's what you just said. Carl said, it's good to know philosophy when you have to crawl around under your house for a week, bracing and leveling the foundation. Things to think about. All right, fair enough. On that note, let's dive back in here.
So there must be a first mover itself unmoved, and that is God. Now, the second cosmological argument of Aquinas was a lot like his first one. Here he proposed the argument from causation, and it too sets out to avoid the problem of an infinite regress. But instead of it explaining the motion of objects, it set out to explain causes and effects in general all over the universe.
I'm going to stop it here and shout out to King, saying, I think maybe you taught me what atheism isn't what I thought. Because I assumed at first what your position was when I heard you say you're an atheist a few times. Learning every day. And yeah, you are not alone. There are very, 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 very many people who are not atheists who think that atheism is the claim that I know no God exists. There's also a lot of atheists who are Gnostic, or at least think they are. And they will have the position, I think I know that no God exists. But that is silly. So again, atheism itself is just the I don't know to the question, do you believe in a God or gods? Or which God or gods do you believe in? And I say none. In the same way you don't believe in Ra, the sun god, I don't believe in Yahweh, the God of the Bible.
The argument went along these lines. Some things are caused. Anything that's caused has to be caused by something else, since nothing causes itself. There can't be an infinite regress of causes, so there must have been a first causer, itself uncaused, and that is God.
Again, kind of the same thing, and GNX here, I would say, I don't know, but I would say it's the brain, but there may be things that the brain does that taps into the soul, spirit, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that we cannot yet measure. So yes, it is the brain that thinks. We can measure that comprehensively from start to end. But again, argument from causation is essentially the same thing as the argument from motion.
Just like with the argument for motion, the point here is pretty simple. Effects have causes. If you think about how you wound up watching this video, you can trace the line of causation back from moment to moment. If you think about it,
that's still not what he said.
Long enough, you can probably go pretty far back. But Aquinas said, again, it can't go back forever. There had to be a first thing that
Why? Why does there have to be a first thing?
Started off the chain of causes and effects, and that thing is God. Argument number 3 was the argument from contingency. And we should step back and get a little background for this one. In philosophy, we often distinguish between necessary beings and contingent beings.
Well, I would probably go get checked for schizophrenia, because how would I know if I was listening to God or listening to voices in my head? Again, we have to go to the null hypothesis that says, well, if I'm hearing voices in my head, most likely it's some type of mental illness. So then if I go and get tested for this, that, and that, and don't have these symptoms, then maybe I could think that be more open to the fact that God is speaking to me. But you don't just get that because I hear sounds. Like, I hear shit that's not there all the time. Like, oh, was that my phone? No, I thought I heard my phone.
This one. In philosophy, we often distinguish between necessary beings and contingent beings. A contingent being is, simply put, any being that could have not existed. That includes you. Sure, you do exist, but you could not have. If you had never been born, the world would go on. And yes, things would be different. We've all seen It's a Wonderful Life, but the world would go on. Instead, your existence is merely contingent on the existence of other things. In your case, you only exist because a certain sperm met a certain egg and swapped some genetic information. You're basically a fluke. But what does that have to do with God? Well, again, Aquinas believed that there had to be something that prevented an infinite regress of contingency. That would mean that the contingency on which everything existed would just keep going back in time. And we can't have a world where everything is contingent, Aquinas said, because then, by definition, it all could easily have never existed. So he needed at least one necessary being. A being that has always existed, that always will exist, and that can't not exist in order to get everything going.
And so, again, all of these are nice descriptions of what God would be, but you're putting the cart before the horse. Just like we said in the beginning with the premises and the conclusion, you're working from the conclusion that a God must exist. How do I make an argument that fits that? Instead of, let me look at the world, make the observations, and try to disprove that God exists, and then be wrong about that.
that always will exist, and that can't not exist in order to get everything going. And that necessary being is God. Aquinas spelled out the reasoning of his argument from contingency this way. There are contingent things. Contingent things can cause
Exactly.
other contingent things, but there can't only be contingent things, because that would mean that there's an infinite regress of contingency and a possibility that nothing might have existed. An infinite regress is impossible, so there must be at least one necessary thing, and that is God. Let that marinate in your brain for a minute while unpacking.
So there are contingent things. Contingent things can cause other contingent things, but there can't only be contingent things, because that would mean that there's an infinite regress of contingency and a possibility that nothing might have existed. Okay, then maybe there's an infinite regress of contingency, and maybe it's possible that nothing might have existed. We see the problem in the argument. You have to prove these things. You can't just say them.
The next argument. This one is built on the idea that we simply need a measuring stick in order to understand the value of things. Good, bad, big, small, hot, cold, none of these concepts can exist in isolation. If you go out for a walk and you see an animal, it's like this big. That animal would be on the small side if it turned out to be a dog. But if it were a rat...
Well, he's showing a thing. But Nick said it's not about comprehending God. It's whether or not there's any evidence that a God exists. I don't know if there is a God, but I've seen nothing to make me think there is a God. I said, shit. Me too. So don't think about this too hard. Does the fact that my profile picture is an anime character make me gay? Yes. You told me not to think about it too hard. GNX said, even if the universe was eternal, that doesn't disprove that it's not contingent upon an eternal God. Agreed. P-Class said, if learning to detach from outside is a known and used method to ground and heal yourself, does that mean that anything outside of your perception may be toxic? If learning to detach from outside is a known and used method to ground and heal yourself, I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea what you're asking here. I do not know at all what this means. Sorry. But yeah,
these concepts can exist in isolation. If you go out for a walk and you see an animal, it's like this big. That animal would be on the small side if it turned out to be a dog. But if it were a rat, that would be huge. How do we know? Because we gauge the size of things in terms of other things. The same idea applies to more abstract concepts, like your grades. How do we know that an A is good? Because it's at the top. We know that there are grades lower than an A, but nothing higher. And Aquinas thought that all our value concepts would just be floating randomly in space if there weren't some anchor, something that defined the value of everything else by being perfect. And that, again, is God. This is how Aquinas developed number 4, known as argument from degrees. Properties come in degrees. In order for there to be degrees of perfection, there must be something perfect against which everything else is measured. God is the pinnacle of perfection.
Again, begging the question. Ruthless Admin said it would take me 2 hours to explain this properly, but in my opinion on existence is non-existence. My opinion on existence is non-existence is an unattainable state, as it in and of itself is a bit of information, which is not nothing.
What?
My opinion on existence is non-existence is an unattainable state. Okay, right. So you can't not exist as a state of being. It's in itself is a bit of information. That's where you lose me. I don't get what you mean by that. But I agree with the first part. But so yeah, okay. The argument from degree. So properties come in degrees. In order for there to be degrees of perfection, there must be something perfect against which everything else is measured. And then God is perfection. And so again, that's working backwards and saying, well, God is perfect. And so everything else that's not perfect is not God. Therefore, that which is perfect is God. That's going back to part 1 of this. That's I always mix this up. That's valid logic, but it's not a sound argument. Because how do you know that God is the pinnacle of perfection?
Okay, we've considered Aquinas' 4 cosmological arguments, but remember, that's only step 1. The next and equally important step in philosophy is critical evaluation. So what do we make of them? As philosophers, if you think an argument is flawed, it's your job to try and figure out why. And by and large, philosophers, theists and atheists alike, have been relatively unimpressed by these 4, having found many problems in them. For one thing, these arguments don't seem to establish the existence of any particular God. Even if the arguments are correct, it doesn't look like Aquinas gets us to the personal, loving God that many people pray to.
Yeah, how do we know that the infinite regress, or the unmoved first mover rather, is not Ra, the sun god?
Instead, we're left with unmoved movers and uncaused causers who seem to have little in common with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who feels emotions and cares about his creation and answers prayers. Basically, this objection says that Aquinas' God is so far removed from the God that theists actually believe in that it doesn't help anything. But maybe you're happy just believing someone's out there, that's fine. But then, how about multiple someones? Because guess what? Aquinas' arguments don't rule out polytheism. There's nothing in any of his arguments to prove that God isn't actually like a committee. Aquinas' cosmological arguments also don't prove the existence of a sentient God. So it might be an old guy with a beard, it might be 6 old guys with beards, but it also might be an egg, or a turtle, or just a big block of stone.
Shout out to Klombadrov! Klombadrov is the God that I believe in. He sent his son Gordon to save us from all our gleeps, which, you know, you guys would similar to a sin. But you know, we all gleep, but you can be forgiven. And Klombadrov is actually better than is the banner here kind of like not on the bottom, or am I just seeing that on this side? But yeah, the Klombadrov doesn't even care if you believe in him. He just wants you to be a good person. So prove to me that the arguments that we just used aren't for Klombadrov. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. What is a gnostic? 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 Is this no, this is a Crash Course. So the Crash Course channel did a whole philosophy playlist. So we're just going through the whole thing and liking each video as we do, because that's what we do when we watch videos. Shout out to Zippy DSM Lee again with the Rumble rant. Said, "You silly heads, how can I disprove your truth claim? Oh, God damn it. If you cannot prove your truth claim." One more time. Oh, here it is. Here it is. How can I disprove your truth claim if you cannot prove your truth claim?
Bingo.
Well said, sir. Well done. Well done.
Guys with beards, but it also might be an egg, or a turtle, or just a big block of stone. These observations have made some philosophers uncomfortable with Aquinas' ultimate conclusion. But there are 2 objections that are thought by some to be real nails in its coffin. The first is simply that Aquinas was wrong in his insistence that there can't be an infinite regress of anything. Aquinas takes it as a given that there had to be a starting point for everything, whether it's the movement of objects, or causes and effects, or contingent beings being created. But it
Took me a second, but I got there. I got it.
It's unclear that this is true, or why it has to be true. If infinite regress can be possible, then Aquinas' first 2 arguments fall apart. But perhaps the most significant—
Oh, wait. We're talking about misery in my life. Okay, Zippy. Christian is really, really sorry. I genuinely love you and everyone here, but I see the misery in anyone's life, and the one you live as well. And it genuinely hurts me denying Jesus. What misery are you discussing? I would love to know what you think you know about me. It's adorable. It's adorable how you get so defensive. Just go live your life and believe in your God. Why do you have to insult people?
Infinite regress can be possible, then Aquinas' first 2 arguments fall apart. But perhaps the most significant charge made against Aquinas' arguments is that they're self-defeating. That is, they actually prove themselves wrong. For example, if Aquinas is right that everything must have been put into motion by something else,
then what started the motion?
And everything must have a cause other than itself, then it seems that God should be subject to those same stipulations. And if God is somehow exempt from those rules, then why couldn't other things be exempt from them too? If they can exist without God being responsible for them, then we don't need God to establish things in the first place. All right, I feel like I've given you a lot to think about. So before we close, let's pause and remind ourselves about a couple of things. First, you can accept a conclusion but reject an argument. So you might agree with Aquinas that God exists, but think none of his arguments prove it. Second, if you disagree with an argument, you don't just get to say, yeah, you're wrong. You have to give a counter-argument. What did Aquinas get wrong, and how can you do better? Why are your reasons superior to his? Remember, philosophy is a dialectic. Yes, Aquinas has been dead for centuries, but he started a conversation, and you get to participate in that when you engage with his arguments and offer your own, either in an effort to help him out by fixing flaws in his arguments while preserving his conclusion, or by refuting his entire project. This is what it means to do.
Correct. You don't know shit about my life. But you claim to. Just like you don't know shit about God, and you claim to. This is what y'all do. It's adorable. And you get so mad when people don't just listen to what you say because you said it. I'm sorry, but you need to do better. You need to do better. This ain't it, homie. This ain't it.
While preserving his conclusion, or by refuting his entire project. This is what it means to do philosophy, to engage with arguments about stuff that matters, and whether or not there's a God seems to matter quite a bit, particularly in the lives of theists. Today, we learned about cosmological arguments and considered 4 of them. Next time, we'll look at Aquinas' 5th argument, the teleological argument. This episode of Crash Course Philosophy is
the teleological argument. All right, so since you guys have been so generous today, let's do I'm going to regret this because we're going to... all right, we're going to do one more. And we're getting into intelligent design. Do I really want to get into this right now? All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Intelligent design.
Over the centuries, the effort to craft a perfect, bulletproof argument for the existence of God has taken many forms. There was the ontological argument of Anselm, there were the 4 cosmological arguments of Aquinas, and they still have their supporters. But many modern philosophers feel that they're simply too flawed, too inconsistent with our scientific understanding of the universe to be convincing today. But there was a 5th argument posited by Thomas Aquinas, and it was popularized several hundred years after his time, in the late 1700s, by the English Christian philosopher William Paley. And this argument for God's existence is still around today, too. In fact, it's one of the most popular. It's known as the teleological argument. You may know it as intelligent design.
I really, really, really hope this was a joke. Oh, honey, sweetie, were you really saying that and then messed it up? Oh, man.
To make his case for the existence of God, William Paley gave us what's known as an argument by analogy. This form of inductive argument invites us to consider a particular state of affairs. Let's just call it situation A, about which we're already likely to have certain beliefs, and then likens it to situation B, with which we are less familiar. The idea is that in the interest of consistency, whatever conclusions we've drawn about A, we ought to draw about B as well. You can make an argument by analogy about anything, but Paley used it to talk about God in what's known as the watchmaker analogy. He asked us to imagine...
Have you guys heard about this before? The watchmaker analogy? Shout out to Christian with the $10 super chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I gotta pull this out of the way for us to even see Morty getting his due. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Yummy, 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 yummy. And what do I see over here before we dive into that? Because I think that's going to take a little bit longer than Zippy again with a rumble rant. Zippy, I love you, brother. I love you, brother. Yeah, eat it up, eat it up. And so does Morty. Thank you, thank you, thank you so very, very much. And of course, that adds Christian to the co-sponsor board. What does he say here? So I do care about you, and I do know that you're not perfect. None of us are. I know the times you sit in your room alone. It's tough. And sometimes I know you actually yell at God out loud, but he's there. So let's go all the way back to the beginning of this. Of course, I'm not perfect. I didn't say that I was perfect. But what you said was that the misery, the misery that I experience, where is it? whatever. I don't know. But you said the misery that I experienced and implied that it was because of the fact that I don't have God. What you don't understand is that I was depressed and miserable when I was a Christian. And the only thing that brought me out of suicidal ideation was realizing that I was not some failed Christian that God hated and just cast aside. And I don't yell at God because I don't believe that God exists, but I leave the possibility open. So yes, I talk to the universe to see if there is anything there because I am genuinely curious. And so if you do care about me and other people, then stop sitting on a high horse and acting like you are better than them or you know more than them. You are not some greater person because you believe things different than I do. I appreciate the intention, but I'm being dead ass about how it comes off when you say things like this to people like me. As if you're better, and oh, poor little Lutch. He's just, sitting in his room crying because he doesn't have God. As if there's no other reason that people would have unhappy moments in their life. And acting as if you know my life at all. That is what is frustrating. So I don't doubt that you care. I don't doubt that you're not I don't doubt that you are a nice person who wants the best for people and myself included. I have no reason to believe that that would not be the case. But I'm telling you, the way that you are communicating is not following the intention behind it. And it's not just you, it's Christians writ large. That is why it is so frustrating, because it's an endless line of individuals who have good intentions, who say offensive things. And of course, if we were to quit, well, that's my man, then everybody, of course, would make fun of us. So we just fucking have to take it. But over and 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 over, people will tell me that they know all about my life and what my life will be with this and that and that and that. No, the fuck you don't. Just because you live your life one way and it works for you, great. I'm happy for you. Am I trying to turn you away from God? Am I trying to tell you that you shouldn't have God? Am I trying to tell you that I see the misery that you must experience because you think this certain thing? That's a silly thing to say. It is an arrogant position that you know which you cannot know. And so please, just take that into account when I know that you have good intentions. But what you are doing is not sending that out. That's all. But thank you. And let me, well, as soon as we dive back into the video, do not let me forget to add Christian to the banner. Thank you. Thank you again for the $10. Much appreciated. Everybody's clowning on ya. Got him. Nick said, I couldn't find any peace in life while I continued to try to believe in God. I said, shit, me too. But after I let go of the idea of God, I finally started to find some peace in my life. Just my life experience. Well, I said, shit, me too. It's almost like we don't have proof of this, and that thinking one thing is not necessarily better than the other. Crazy. What is that? Am I missing something in the background? Because this is like the second time somebody, I think it was you, who said something about this. And I know they put little things in the background. But yeah. Did I say God is there? I said I'm open to the idea that God might be there, but he hasn't given me any evidence that he is, so maybe. I don't. So if you're below me, then why are you telling me how to live my life? If you're below me, then why the fuck don't you listen to me and live like me? But we're not. You're not below me, and I'm not below you. We are equal as men. Now, obviously, we're not exactly the same. But if you're below me, then why the fuck would I listen to you? That don't make no sense. King said, did I miss something? Words are hard. Or that you're going to be the one to save a poor soul. It's disrespectful. Yes, it is. And again, I understand that it comes with good intentions. I'm just letting you know that every single time any Christian does this, this is how it is received. And if you do actually have those good intentions, then you shouldn't want that person to feel that way. So if you know that from this point and continue, which I don't think that you would, because again, I don't think you're a bad person or a being or any of those things. I do believe that you care about people. Then it's, you can see how it'd be frustrating. P. Clav said, bro, that was heavy. You'd have half doxed yourself already. Fair is fair. I'm R80. What are you talking about? Y'all are all over the place tonight. GNX said, I disagree with Christian on this issue. Atheists can live very happy lives without God. I said, thank you, Lutch. That breakdown was so epic. You make me blush. Thank you. All right, let's grab one from Zippy here. Oh, wait, did I miss this? Oh, this is this. There we go. Shout out to Zippy. One more time. Oh, we got to get rid of it. God damn it. All right. Hold on. All right. Zippy says, could be worse. You couldn't have good and just could be worse. Could have good or God. Could have God. Okay. So it could be worse. You could have God and just ignore life like a nihilist because you have God and it's up to God to move you and others. Nietzsche's rolling in his grave. Oof. Yeah, definitely could be worse. And then, yes, definitely the Tasmanian Devil. Morty right here. That's his new nickname. All right, we'll grab these last two. And then we will grab, yes, he's half Chihuahua, half Golden Doodle. Nick said, the Indian Jesus is right. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. The Indian Jesus is right. You'd be ashamed of your fellow Christians if you heard what they say to Lutch and myself. It's going to push anyone away when you are continually being vilified. Yep. And then we'll end with Christian here before we dive back in. I said, knowing I'm not worthy, but his grace has shown me that I'm beyond blessed. So I'm below you. Everyone else prostrates themselves with their shoulders back. I'm saying I'm better than you. God bless, brother. Everyone here who's Christians truly want to see Christ for... Okay. I tried. Ruther said, Christians believe that it's actually impossible to not believe in God, only to rebel and reject him. That's why it's impossible for them to comprehend that we just actually don't believe him. Did I miss one? I think you missed one. These are back to back, both on StreamYard and YouTube. So knowing them, are they saying I'm better than you? And then this one, both here and on Discord or on YouTube. So maybe you missed one. Either way, thank you so very much for hanging out. I very much appreciate the challenge, and of course, I appreciate the money, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you. You have a good one. You have a good night. All right. Let's the watchmaker analogy.
But Paley used it to talk about God in what's known as the watchmaker analogy. He asked us to imagine what we would think if we found a watch on the ground. Would we imagine that the watch simply appeared randomly, spontaneously on its own? Or would we see the complexity of it and notice that its parts seemed to come together in a particular way in order to accomplish a goal? If so, wouldn't we think that the watch must have been made by someone on purpose? Paley was arguing that the teleology demonstrated by a watch would lead us to conclude that it was designed by an intelligent creator with a particular end in mind. Teleological means goal-oriented or purposeful, and we can easily pick out the teleologies of man-made objects.
I don't, well, let me just really quick. I don't think this is in here. So yeah, okay. Another version of this conversation. I don't know the argument itself, but another way to address this would be like if you're walking in the woods and you see a bunch of sticks and trees that have fallen, or rather, excuse me, you see a bunch of sticks and trees on the ground in a creek. How would you determine if it was a beaver dam or if it was just a bunch of trees that fell over.
It's got a mug here, as an example. It was created with a particular teleology in mind. It was designed to hold a liquid without leaking. It's got a handle, put here deliberately in such a way that human fingers could easily fit into it, and its composition is such that it will keep the liquid inside warm without burning the hand that holds it. We wouldn't assume that a coffee cup would simply come to be, exhibiting such perfect design for its particular function, without someone having created it that way on purpose. So in the same way that the teleology of a cup implies the existence of a cup maker, and that of a watch implies the existence of a watchmaker, Paley saw teleology in the world and assumed from that God's existence. He continued his analogy
Assumed, and you know what happens when you assume.
By comparing a watch to a living organism. Look at the complexity of the human body. Heart and lungs working together, producing sweat to keep ourselves from overheating,
Must be God.
transforming food into energy. We're just generally amazing all around.
Must be God.
Look at how elements of the natural world operate according to complex laws that sustain a beautiful natural harmony. Paley said
Shout out to Fibonacci.
that this couldn't possibly just have happened any more than the design of a pocket watch could just have happened. There must be a designer. If you accept this analogy, then you agree with Paley that just like the purposefulness of a watch compels us to believe in a watchmaker, the purposefulness of the world compels us to believe in a world maker, God. And you might think this is a fantastic
That does sound pretty cool. The world maker.
argument. It might even be what motivates your own belief in God. There are lots of people who say things like sunsets and babies show them that there must be a designer God.
That is the most frustrating argument of all. Just look at how beautiful everything is. It's like, don't you wear glasses?
But some of you probably aren't buying it, and you know what to do. Arguments are refuted by counter-arguments. So when you want to refute an argument by analogy, you offer a disanalogy. Basically, you demonstrate that situation A and situation B are dissimilar enough that the analogy doesn't actually work.
And you guys know that I love my analogies and hypotheticals. This is the, stealing from, actually, I think Tim Pool stole it from somebody else, right? I don't remember who it was, but how would you feel if you didn't eat yesterday? If you cannot answer that question without not having eaten yesterday, you don't. Oh my goodness. Zippy, you are what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You are getting up to the leaderboard here. Let's get Morty his goodies. Thank you. Well, let's get the full. There we go. Here, eat it, motherfucker. Morty, it's in my hand. You forgot how to eat? You know how to eat? We will eat you as Chinese. Okay. Zippy said the crux of the God argument is, quote, do not bother others. Man cannot see into the infinite, as man is finite and makes so many mistakes. Man can cooperate with others, but never force. Force enslaves the savior. Well said. Well said, sir. I said shit. Well said. Well said. I really, really like that. Very, very well said. But yeah, earlier, with the intelligent design, or excuse me, the beaver dam, you would obviously be able to see the structure, and that which is what am I trying to say? That is, I am drawing a blank. Fiddled with. I don't know. I don't know, but he's got it. Why am I drawing a blank? I lose. I'm taking the L there. But
You demonstrate that situation A and situation B are dissimilar enough that the analogy doesn't actually work. So, to object to Paley, we have to identify a way in which elements of the natural world, like human bodies, are relevantly dissimilar to watches. When we're talking about a watch, an objector might say, it obviously had a creator. After all, we can take it apart and see clearly how the gears fit together and move the hands and keep time. But there's so much in the natural world that isn't understandable in the same way. For instance, why would God have designed our eyes to have a blind spot? Paley responded that it doesn't matter whether we can understand how something was created. The point is simply that it was. He might point out, for instance, that I actually don't understand the inner workings of my phone, but I still know it had a creator. Whether or not I understand how it was created is beside the point. Next objection, some parts of nature seem to be without purpose. A blind spot obviously doesn't have any function, and neither do nipples on a man. Paley's response here was, just because you
nipples on a man
don't know there's a purpose doesn't mean there isn't one. But this is a problem too, because his whole argument for believing in God is that you should could look at the world and see purpose. So if we see some things in the world that are working great and really seem to have complexity and definite use and others that don't, that's a flaw in his argument. What's more, the absence of any obvious purpose in things can lead people to start searching for purposes, effectively
Ooh, Zippy going hard right here. God damn. God is beyond human understanding. The moon in orbit is nothing like a reflection of the moon in muddy waters. Damn. Did you get that from somewhere? Is that you? Because that's a fucking bar, bro. That's a fucking bar. The moon in orbit is nothing like a reflection of the moon in muddy waters. Chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. Well said.
Of any obvious purpose in things can lead people to start searching for purposes, effectively making them up. For instance, I could find a purpose for this finger. I could use it as a nose picker. It would make a good one. It's just the right size to really get in there and dig around, but was my finger designed to pick noses? Probably not. 20th century British
And this is, speaking of muddy waters, the just entire intelligent design argument is, not a full rebuttal, but just kind of a retort to it, is the notion that if we look at a puddle, the water perfectly fits the hole. Does that mean that the water was, that somebody put the water and shaped it for the hole? Or does liquid just do that? It fits perfectly, but it's just natural.
Dig around, but was my finger designed to pick noses? Probably not. 20th century British philosopher Bertrand Russell made fun of this purpose-finding tendency by pointing out that you could look at a bunny and form the belief that God gave it a fuzzy white tail so hunters would have something to shoot at. The point is,
he's coming right at us!
If we're the ones inventing purposes rather than recognizing ones that are inherently there, then we're the real creators of purpose in the world, not God. Basically, if you believe that God made eyes for seeing, then you also have to believe that he designed fingers as nose pickers and rabbit tails as bullseyes and blind spots as ways for us to get into car accidents. So the counter-argument here is we don't just get to pick and choose and say God designed the stuff we want him to have designed.
Even in the example, motherfuckers wearing glasses. How many of you wear glasses or have had LASIK or wear contacts? Or not very intelligent, not very intelligently designed. If at 5 years old, your shit don't work. If you bought a car and 5 years later, the headlights didn't work, would you say that that car was intelligently designed? So we said these are my simplistic, sometimes word soup takes. As I said, religion is an evolution of understanding. Man first saw the divine in nature, animals, and the elements. The pantheons humanize the divine. Fair enough. I mean, again, just a fucking bar. Just a fucking bar, my dude.
Is we don't just get to pick and choose and say God designed the stuff we want him to have designed and not the other stuff. Rather than searching for disanalogies, another way Paley's argument has been countered is with an alternative explanation for condition B. Paley says that bodies are purposeful and from there concludes that the purpose had to have been put there by an intelligent creator. But another explanation for how bodies came to have the complexity and functionality they have today is natural selection and random mutation. We can
That's more likely by about 100,000%.
Concede that the existence of a designer God helped make sense of the origins of the world in a pre-scientific age.
Oh, you mean like it was a way that humans who didn't have better knowledge were using to try to understand the universe they lived in?
But now we have a perfectly good scientific explanation for how the complexity of the world came about. So who needs a watchmaker when you have evolution by natural selection? Another objection to Paley's case came from the 18th century Scottish philosopher David Hume, who pointed out that if we're to take the analogy seriously, we'd need to conclude that the creator that Paley posits seems to make a lot...
Like, rude, true, still rude. Is it though? Is it though? How's it rude? Motherfuckers got glasses. I mean, I'm 20/20 right up in this bitch. But are you?
Seriously, we'd need to conclude that the creator that Paley posits seems to make a lot of mistakes. And not just blind spots, like how about hurricanes? Or why would he make bodies with certain tissues, like in the breast, prostate, or colon, that are so incredibly prone to cancer? Why would he make umbilical cords that could wrap around a baby's neck? Why would...
Intelligent design, perfectly created, exactly in the image of God.
make butterflies have to wait for hours immobile for their wings to dry as soon as they come out of their chrysalis, making them easy prey for predators. Hume pointed out that the world is chock full of stuff that looks cruel, ridiculous, impractical, and contrary to life. A flawed world, he said, implies a flawed creator.
Ooh! A flawed world implies a flawed creator. We're getting a lot of these tonight. Zippy says the Abrahamics just amalgamated all human gods into a single parental all-father. To me, this is a natural evolution of human understanding. Humans humanize and organize things. I completely agree, which is why the notion that the current iteration of what we have is the end of evolution is silly. You don't think we're going to get any better understanding of God and the universe than the fucking Bible? Come on!
Come on, man. Impractical and contrary to life. A flawed world, he said, implies a flawed creator. Now, the development of evolutionary biology over the past couple hundred years has taken a pretty heavy toll on the teleological argument, but it still has many supporters, and their method for defending their view is a good model for the way the Socratic method is supposed to work. When opponents raise objections to your theory, you need to either reject it or modify it in a way that responds to those objections. So, supporters of the
Basically, you can't... Nuh-uh! 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 Especially if the burden is on you. As the atheist, I can just you can throw arguments at me. No. I could do that. That's not ideal, but you would want me to give reasons why I don't accept the religious arguments that you're throwing my way. But the burden's on you, so I can just be like, nope, don't accept it. I don't, because I try to be more engaging and in good faith than that. But I could, and I wouldn't be wrong.
Your theory, you need to either reject it or modify it in a way that responds to those objections. So, supporters of the teleological argument set out to modify and strengthen their view. Here are a couple modern responses. Contemporary British philosopher Richard Swinburne gives us a modern teleological argument with a twist of probability. He says that even if...
Hey, we got Sam Willard in the building. Welcome to the party. No, nothing for you yet. Welcome to the party. We are doing another Philosophy Friday, and we are closing up with intelligent design. Welcome to the party.
Philosopher Richard Swinburne gives us a modern teleological argument with a twist of probability. He says that even if there's another possible explanation for the universe, we should go with the explanation that's most likely to be true. And he says that it's simply more probable that God designed the world than that it came about through the pure chance of evolutionary process.
Prove it.
Likewise, another class of modern defenses of the teleological argument are collectively known as fine-tuning arguments. These arguments accept the Big Bang and evolution as scientific truths, but they maintain that for the evolution of life to occur, it's most likely that God set up the precise conditions that it required, rather than them coming about by accident.
So the water was shaped perfectly for the hole. It's not just that water just naturally fills the gap. That's what the fine-tuning argument is. The reason that we live in the universe where humans can live, on the planet where humans can live, is because it's the planet where humans can live. If we couldn't live here, we wouldn't be able to live here and be like, oh, it's not fine-tuned. So we don't have the counterfactual. We don't have a planet where humans were alive and didn't make it because of different tuning of gravity and all the whatever factors that they use. It is the way it is, and it just so happens that this planet and this solar system happens to have the conditions for life. Things happen.
That God set up the precise conditions that it required, rather than them coming about by accident. After all, if Earth were just a little closer to or farther from the sun, if the composition of the atmosphere was slightly different, if the
then we wouldn't be here to question any of this.
content of our oceans was something other than what it is, life would have never taken root. A lot of people think these modernized arguments have more going for them than Paley's did. This is partly because these types of teleologists have moved from making assertions about certainty to making claims about probability, which seem easier to get right and to defend. Objectors will counter by saying that the problem with these arguments is you can't really make a probability claim when you only have a sample set of one.
Right. You can't make a probability claim when you only have a sample set of one. Have you ever lived in a different universe? Have you ever lived on a different planet? Then what are we talking about? So he says the church, for all practical purposes, enslaved God. It's what humans do. Take a thing and use it in the most expedient way. I like that too. You're on fire tonight, son. You are on fire. This girl is on fire. Sorry. Okay. GNX said, since evolution didn't happen here, therefore it couldn't evolve out there. What if it did happen here? Because, we're here.
If we had multiple Earths that we could examine, we could see how likely any particular adaptation is or how unique the conditions for life are. Then we would know if it were likely or unlikely to happen without God. But we can't know that, at least not now, because we can only access this one world where we know that things evolved as they did. Thus, the counterargument goes, Swinburne and other modern teleologists are right to recognize that if things were slightly different, then life maybe wouldn't have evolved or would have evolved very differently. But
yeah, so the fine-tuning argument is, well, if things were different, then things would be different. Yup, that's how things work. If things were different, then things would be different.
that is wholly different from claiming that it's unlikely to have happened in the first place. So, today, you learned about the teleological argument, objections to it, and the responses to those objections, and the responses to the objections. But we've spent an awful lot of time talking about God's existence, so next time, let's consider what God is like, if it exists. This episode
All right, so we're not even done with the God talk, and we are going further into arguments for you guys to use against me, the atheist. We're getting into this because it is fundamental to the types of discussions that I want to have, not just on the channel, but with you guys in the Discord community. This isn't just a situation for me to come and talk and make money and then go and do whatever. Yes, I would like to make money. I need to eat. I need to pay rent. But the purpose of this is to corral you guys into a community where we can actually talk and actually organize and actually come up with better ideas, come up with ways to implement our ideas, all of that stuff. And that happens not so much on stream, but behind the scenes in Discord. So please give it is, and again, guys, it is absolutely free to join. The after party, you do have to be a channel member, but again, that starts at $2.99 a month. So you've got, that's 12 after parties. That's 12 after parties for $3. Worst case scenario, $3. Give it a shot and come through. And you know what? I'm joining the after party right now. So I am already there. Don't let me be waiting by myself. So let's grab some more of these chats before we head to that after party. Zippy says the church for to be this one. We got that one. Nick said my dad died of cancer when I was 2.5 years old. After his 3 older sisters promised me that everyone was praying for him so God would heal him. I prayed with everything in me, but to no avail. For every single person who has a situation like Trump, where it's, oh, by the grace of God, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are not so lucky, even with the Trump situation. A man died. A father died. A firefighter died. If that is your idea of God's grace, then no fucking thank you, existence or not. Because I can tell you what, if I was God, I would not have killed the firefighter. That makes me better than your God. I don't get it. But I'm trying. I'm very sorry that happened to you, Nick. And you know, we've already been there. We've all been there. And so it makes us tough. Sam says the fine-tuning argument sucks. Though yeah, for your reasons. What? I'll just stick with the fine-tuning argument sucks. I, for myself, believe in God. I do not believe that science conflicts. Science was begun to describe what God put together. And again, that is the version of God that I can accept. That this, you know, the laws of physics and all that stuff are in place. And if there was, you know, someone who hit over the domino, Okay, fine. I have no way of saying that or proving that or disproving that or knowing that. I can accept that that might be possible. But beyond that, I just don't have anything to go on. Shout out to Hussein. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Said God is the necessary existence. God can do as he pleases with his creation. What makes you think he's any under obligation to us? I never said that. I'm under no obligation to you, but I could be a dick to you or I could be nice to you. And I'm just saying, instead of choosing to be a dick, how about just be nice? What's begging the question? The entire the entire history of fossil records is the evidence for evolution. Bacteria indeed does evolve. PClab, we got 0 Earth-like planets. We got 0 civilization worlds. How far have we gone from the Earth? What percentage of the universe, not just the observable universe, but the entire universe, what percentage of the universe have we as humans explored? What are we doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What, you want to go here? Weirdo. What the answer is a very, 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 very small percentage. So this is like taking a mug like this, going into the Pacific Ocean, scooping up some water to the very tippy top, and be like, "There's no whales in here. There can't. 0 whales, 0. That's what this is. We have only. I mean, let's get actually a specific number. Let's see. Don't show my thing. Okay. What percentage of the entire universe have humans interacted with? Yeah. Yeah, let's just start there. Oh, we got 2 responses. So there's different types. Okay, so this one says humans have interacted with an exceedingly small fraction of the universe. Our interactions are limited to the following: Earth, the Moon, Mars and other planets, the solar system, and nearby space. Despite these achievements, regions we've explored or interacted with are minuscule compared to the vast expanse of the universe. The observable universe, that's just what we can see through our strongest telescopes. The observable universe is approximately 93 billion light years in diameter, containing roughly 2 trillion galaxies, each with a billion or trillions of stars. The area humans have directly explored or interacted with is confined to our solar system, a tiny speck in the grand scale of the universe. Virtually 0. And then this one says humans have interacted in an incredibly small fraction of the universe. Interaction can be defined in terms of direct contact, observation. Yeah, okay, so we want this one. Yeah, we want this one. So yeah, I mean that's why. Like, if you just take if you take a cup and just scoop the ocean, you're not going to get a good reading on what the ocean is. And that's where we're at. Sam says, but this has been limited to single-celled organisms. No, it's not. Look at the Galapagos finches. This is what started everything. The Galapagos finches. Within 1 year. Within 1 year, you saw the evolutionary traits. Gianna said, bacteria only ever evolves into bacteria. How is that evolution? Because then it goes further and further and further and further and further. So if you are an ape, and then you gain the ability to think and have language, you're still an ape, but you've evolved. I know. Come on. Come here. That's why I didn't want you to jump down in the first place, because I knew you'd be back. I know everything. Guamtech. So we're currently watching chimps begin their Stone Age. How is that not evolution? It is. Don't know. Good question. Sam said, fantastic question. We are told to pray, but we have no way of telling what God's plan is. Agreed. Gonzag said, and again, why does God and evolution have to be mutually exclusive? That's those who believe in God. Zippy said, nature is orderly chaos as given by God or something. Why not just orderly chaos? Why do we need the, I don't understand why we need the God part in there. Does your message, what is the meaningful change to this message if you just said nature is orderly chaos, period, or something, period? How does that change what you're actually saying? Pushing buttons, Ayush. What else we got? I don't know if that's in response to. I apologize. I've never seen a dinosaur turn into a chicken. Is it possible, GNX, this is a question directly for you. Is it possible that when people say evolution, when what happens in your mind is not what people actually mean when they say evolution? Or are you sure that you have an understanding of what people who believe in evolution, what they believe in? Is it possible that you don't understand what people are saying when they say evolution? Except people telling me that he was so good, God needed him more than I did. It angered me because I call bullshit, because I needed him to raise me. God gets him for eternity. I don't even get 20 years. Yep. Very sad. But, you know, it's all part of God's plan. He loves you, and he's doing it for you. And if you're not thankful, then you're a piece of shit. Good question. Good question. When has God ever turned a dinosaur into a chicken? Evolution is merely adaptation on a larger scale. Adaptation to the point of speciation. That is literally correct. Galapagos finches are showing adaptation. You adapt and 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 adapt until you have a new species. That is what we mean. At no point, if human came from apes, why are there still apes? Because that's not, the species split. Again, is it possible that you don't understand what it is that people mean, and that the notion that apes transform into humans or chickens transform into dinosaurs, that is silly. That is stupid. If people actually did believe that, I would call them stupid. But that's why I'm asking. That is not what people believe. That is not what the theory of evolution states. Adaptation over time until speciation. Guamtech just brought up the gorillas in the Stone Age. He just brought that up. It's right here. We're currently watching chimps begin their Stone Age era. Their Stone Age. How is that not evolution? Asked and answered, sir. We do see space station natural selection, but how is that going to turn a bacteria into a bachelor? Again, you just on a long enough timeline. You are thinking in one generation. We are talking about hundreds of generations. You're not talking. You just go Google. Just Google evolution. You don't have a right understanding of what it is. In the same way that you think I don't understand what it is that you're trying to say. When did you actually say the thing? Human beings are not apes. Oh, I got him. How did I know that you were going to say that? It's almost as if I've had this fucking argument a million times before. It's almost as if this argument has been had a million times before by the highest theologists, the highest Christians, the highest intelligent design, as alongside the highest level scientists. It's almost as if I'm not some schmuck, or I am some schmuck, that's not smart enough to think of this stuff on my own and actually did research instead of just listening to people straw man what the fuck I'm talking about. How did I know? How did I know you would bring up apes? That's not what it is. You're arguing against ghosts. I agree that no apes gave birth to humans, or no ape was transformed into a human. Nobody is making that argument. So when you say that's silly, we agree. We're not talking about that. Homtech said, who is to say Adam and Eve were the kind of humans we see today? Even Europe has cities built for smaller people. We've changed so much in just a few hundred years.
Bingo.
It's almost like it's right in front of your face and you have to choose not to see it. Wisdom in the Sky reminds me of Odin. Odin was a riot. A pain in the ass, but a riot. I'll take your word for it. The entire theory of evolution is based on speculation and inference, whereas the word of God is categorical and definitive. Okay, yep, nope. Hey, I'm a Christian now. You guys, evolution is fake, and it's apes turning into humans and chickens turning into dinosaurs, and God is categorical and definitive, and there's no way that you could ever not know it. All the people saying that you can't prove or disapprove, you can't prove or disprove, you're wrong, because Hussein said it's categorical and definitive. So I tried, guys, but I failed. And it's very, very, very clear to me now that all of the things that I've said have been entirely debunked. So, I guess, do you know Australopithecus, Neanderthals? These are intermediate species. Your personal incredulity is not an argument. You're asking questions as if they don't have an answer. They have an answer. Go look for the answer. Correct. As I said earlier, adaptation on a long enough timeline creates speciation, and we have evolution. I don't know. Google, just Google it, and then come back to me. Because if you're asking those types of questions, then you don't understand what the theory even is. You don't even understand what it is. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe you'll read it and understand it properly and be able to properly debunk it. I'm open to that. I believe nothing except that anything is possible. It is possible that you are right. But as we learned before, you may have a justified truth belief, but you do not have knowledge on evolution and how it works. So even if you are correct, then you are still wrong. Yes, I have read Darwin. Have you? Because this is not at all what you're presenting is not at all what Darwin said. All the hardline Christians here all believe they are right, but I'm sure that they couldn't even agree on anything for sure. They're the same religion. Yep. You ever seen $1 billion? You ever seen God? What are we talking about? All right, I'm headed to the after party. Thank you guys so very, very much for hanging out with me. And no, we're not going to do any more ads. Thank you so very, very much. I do appreciate you guys hanging out. Big shout out to the sponsors of the stream. We had a lot going all the way around. Of course, we had our boy, the Funk Master General. We had some more gifted memberships there. Zippy was coming in hot with all the Rumble rants. Loved it. A very, very heartfelt super chat from Christian here. We disagree, but we have great respect. Thank you. Oh, and of course, I can't forget our boy, Guam Tech, going around the damn it, I fucked it up. What was I going around the tax man. I don't know. I was trying to say going around YouTube and getting me directly. Either way, you know what the fuck I mean. Thank you so very, very much. I appreciate you guys to no end. But please remember that this is not about me just coming and talking and getting money and moving on with my life. That is not what this is. If I did not have to pay rent and eat, then I would never ask for a dime from you guys. Unfortunately, I do. But what I really want is to build this community. Please, guys, join the Discord. It is free. It's free. Just try it out. And if you don't like it, you can leave. You will like it. And if you want to sign up as a member, again, $3 for 12 after parties at the very worst case scenario. So thank you so very much. Once again, we had my co-host Morty here, and I am your host Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Until next time, guys, I am out of here. Peace.